The call came on a Tuesday morning, the kind of cold October day when the wind off Lake Michigan cuts through Chicago like a blade, stripping the last stubborn leaves from the trees lining the Gold Coast mansions. For the Thornton family, it was the call they had been dreading, and in some dark corners of their hearts, anticipating for nearly 3 years. Richard Thornton, patriarch of the Thornton Industries empire, was dying, and this time, the doctors said, it was real. The message was identical for each family member, delivered by Margaret Chen, Richard's executive assistant of 32 years. Her voice, normally steady and professional, carried an unusual weight. Mr. Thornton requests your presence at Thornton Manor this Saturday at 2 p.m. He says it's urgent. He says it's time. For Victoria Thornton Ashford, the call came while she was in the middle of a heated conference call with her venture capital partners in San Francisco. She was 43, elegant, razor-sharp, with her father's piercing blue eyes and her late mother's aristocratic cheekbones. She had spent the last 15 years building her own empire in Silicon Valley, deliberately 3,000 miles away from her father's steel and manufacturing dynasty. "I'll be there," she told Margaret, her voice betraying nothing. She ended her business call without explanation, booked a first-class ticket on the next flight to Chicago, and sat very still in her corner office overlooking the bay. Her father was dying. She should feel something, grief, relief, something. Instead, she felt only a cold, calculating alertness. The empire was about to change hands, and Victoria Thornton Ashford had not spent her entire life being perfect, being the dutiful daughter, being everything he demanded, only to watch it slip through her fingers now. For Marcus Thornton, the call interrupted his fourth whiskey of the day. It was 11 a.m. He was 38 years old and looked 50, with the bloated face and broken capillaries of a man who had been drinking professionally for 2 decades. He was sitting in his usual booth at Murphy's, a bar 3 blocks from Thornton Tower, where nobody asked questions and the bartender knew to keep them coming. Yeah, I'll be there," Marcus slurred into the phone, then immediately ordered another drink. His father was dying. Good. Let the old bastard die. Let him take his disappointment, his contempt, his endless comparisons to perfect Victoria to the grave. Marcus had stopped trying to please Richard Thornton the day his father looked him in the eye at his high school graduation and said, "Your sister would have done better." He'd been proving him right ever since. For James Chen, the call came while he was reviewing the quarterly reports in his office on the 47th floor of Thornton Tower. At 35, he was the youngest chief financial officer in the company's 90-year history, a position he'd earned through sheer relentless competence. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair he kept precisely trimmed and dark eyes that missed nothing. "Of course, Aunt Margaret," he said quietly. "I'll clear my schedule." He sat back in his leather chair and looked out over the Chicago skyline, the city his family had helped build, generation after generation. His mother, Margaret, had worked for Richard Thornton since before James was born. James had grown up in the shadow of Thornton Tower, had been mentored by Richard himself, had been given every opportunity. He owed the old man everything. And yet, James Chen had a secret that lived in his chest like a stone, heavy and cold, a secret that Richard Thornton's impending death was about to force into the light. He picked up his phone and typed a single text message to a number he wasn't supposed to have. "It's happening. Saturday. Be ready." The response came immediately. "I've been ready my whole life." For Elena Rodriguez, the call came while she was elbow-deep in engine grease in the garage bay of Thornton Industries' South Side manufacturing plant. At 28, she was the youngest master mechanic in the facility, a job she'd fought for, bled for, and earned despite every obstacle thrown in her path. She was small,
compact, with calloused hands, dark eyes that blazed with intelligence, and a smile that could light up a room when she chose to use it, which wasn't often. "Mr. Thornton wants to see you," the plant manager said, looking uncomfortable. "At the Manor, Saturday." Elena froze, her wrench suspended in midair. "Why?" "Didn't say, just said you're invited to some family meeting." "I'm not family," Elena said flatly. "Apparently, you are now." Before we continue, let me tell you something. This story is about to take a shocking turn. What's about to happen in that manor will change Elena's life forever, and it might just change how you see your own family. If you don't want to miss a single moment of this journey, do me a favor right now. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you think is about to happen, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. This is a story that happens in real life every single day. Innocent people caught in secrets they never asked for. Keep watching, you won't want to miss what comes next. Resume story. Elena stood very still, her heart hammering. She had worked at Thornton Industries for 4 years. She had been careful, so careful to stay invisible, to blend in, to be just another employee. She kept her head down, did her work, collected her paycheck. She never went to company events, she never drew attention, and most importantly, she never ever went near the family. But Thornton knew. Somehow, he knew. The garage bay suddenly felt very small, the walls pressing in. She wiped her hands on her coveralls, her mind racing. She had planned for this, she had prepared for this, but she wasn't ready. She would never be ready. "Tell him I'll be there," she said. Saturday arrived cold and clear. Thornton Manor sat on 5 acres of prime lakefront property in Lake Forest, 40 miles north of Chicago. It was a sprawling Gothic Revival mansion built in 1923 by Richard's grandfather, all stone and wrought iron and leaded glass windows that gleamed like dark eyes. The circular driveway could accommodate 20 cars. Today, there were 5. Victoria arrived first, driving herself in a rented Mercedes. She wore a black Armani suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe chignon, her makeup flawless. She looked like a woman attending a board meeting, not a deathbed vigil. She stepped out of the car and looked up at the house where she'd grown up, feeling nothing but a vague sense of claustrophobia. She hated this place. She had always hated this place. Margaret Chen met her at the door. Margaret was 62, small and elegant, with silver-streaked black hair and an expression of perpetual composure. She had run Richard Thornton's life for 30 years, managing his schedule, his correspondence, his secrets. She knew where all the bodies were buried, literally and figuratively. "Victoria," she said, her voice warm, "thank you for coming." "How is he?" Victoria asked.
"Dying," Margaret said simply. "But lucid, sharp as ever, actually. He's been waiting for this. Waiting to die? Waiting to tell the truth." Victoria's eyes narrowed. What truth? Margaret just smiled, a strange, sad smile. "He'll explain. Come, he's in the library." They walked through the cavernous entry hall, past the grand staircase, past the portraits of Thornton patriarchs glaring down from the walls. Victoria had always hated those portraits. 3 generations of men who looked exactly like her father, tall, severe, judgmental. Men who built empires and crushed anyone who got in their way. The library was Richard's sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive stone fireplace, leather furniture that smelled of cigars and old money. And there, in a wheelchair by the window overlooking the lake, was Richard Thornton himself. He had been a giant of a man once, 6'3", broad-shouldered, with a voice that could fill a boardroom and a presence that could silence a crowd. Now he was a husk. The cancer had eaten him from the inside out, leaving behind a skeletal figure in an expensive cashmere robe. His white hair was thin, his skin papery and pale, But his eyes, those fierce blue eyes, were still sharp, still calculating, still terrifyingly aware. "Victoria," he said, his voice a rasp, punctual as always. "Father," she said, not moving to embrace him. They hadn't embraced in 20 years. "You look well. California agrees with you. It's 3,000 miles from you. That agrees with me." Richard actually smiled at that, a thin, bitter smile. "Still angry. Always. Good. You'll need that anger today." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. We're waiting for the others." Marcus arrived 20 minutes later, stumbling slightly as he came through the door. He reeked of whiskey and cigarettes, his suit rumpled, his face unshaven. Victoria looked at him with undisguised contempt. "You're drunk," she said. "You're observant," Marcus shot back. He looked at their father. "You're dying. About time." "Marcus," Margaret said sharply. "No, let him speak," Richard said. "It's honest, more honest than anything else in this family." He looked at his son with an expression that might have been pity or disgust, or both. "You're wasting your life, boy." "I learned from the best," Marcus said, pouring himself a drink from the bar. James Chen arrived exactly on time, as always. He was in a suit and tie, his posture perfect, his expression neutral. He greeted Victoria with a polite nod, ignored Marcus entirely, and went directly to Richard. "Sir," he said, and there was genuine warmth in his voice, "thank you for including me. You're family, James. You've always been family, more than some who share my blood." That last part was directed at Marcus, who responded by draining his glass. "Are we waiting for someone else?" Victoria asked, checking her watch. "Yes," Richard said. "One more." "Who?" "Someone you don't know. Someone none of you know. Someone I should have introduced you to a long time ago." The doorbell rang. Margaret went to answer it. There was a murmur of voices in the hallway, and then Margaret returned. Behind her was Elena Rodriguez. She stood in the doorway of the library, looking utterly out of place. She was still in her work clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, grease still under her fingernails. She looked young, nervous, and fierce all at once, like a cornered animal deciding whether to run or fight. Victoria looked at her with polite confusion. Marcus looked at her with bleary indifference. James looked at her and went very, very still. "Who the hell is this?" Victoria asked. Richard Thornton looked at the young woman in the doorway, and for the first time in years, his expression softened. It was an expression none of his children had ever seen directed at them. It was an expression of profound, aching regret. "This," Richard said, his voice cracking, "is Elena Rodriguez, and she is the reason I called you all here today." He paused, taking a shuddering breath. "Elena is my daughter, your sister, and I have been lying to all of you for 28 years. The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's face went white, then red. "What did you just say?" Marcus started laughing, a high, slightly hysterical laugh. "Oh, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect." James said nothing. He just stared at Elena, his expression unreadable. Elena stood frozen in the doorway, her hands clenched at her sides. She knew this moment was coming. She had prepared for it. But nothing could have prepared her for the weight of their stares, the shock and anger and confusion radiating from the strangers who were apparently her family. Richard looked at each of them in turn. "Sit down," he said, "all of you. It's time I told you the truth. It's time I told you about Maria."
Richard Thornton had not always been the cold, calculating titan who ruled Chicago's industrial empire with an iron fist. Once, a very long time ago, he had been young. He had been capable of joy. He had been capable of love. It was the summer of 1995. Richard was 42 years old, already the CEO of Thornton Industries, already married to Catherine Ashford, the daughter of a Connecticut senator, already the father of Victoria and Marcus. His life was perfectly arranged, perfectly controlled, a machine that ran with precision and purpose. He was successful. He was powerful. He was utterly, completely miserable. Catherine was a beautiful woman, elegant and poised, the perfect wife for a man of his station. She was also cold, distant, and more interested in her charity galas and social standing than in her husband or children. They had long since stopped sharing a bedroom. They had long since stopped pretending to be anything other than business partners in the enterprise of maintaining the Thornton name. That summer, Thornton Industries acquired a small manufacturing plant on the south side of Chicago. It was a struggling operation on the verge of bankruptcy, but it had valuable patents and a skilled workforce. Richard personally oversaw the acquisition, spending weeks at the plant, meeting with workers, reviewing operations, trying to understand why it was failing. That's when he met Maria Rodriguez. She was 26 years old, a quality control inspector at the plant. She was the daughter of Mexican immigrants, the first in her family to go to college, working 2 jobs to support her younger siblings after their father died. She was brilliant, fierce, and completely unimpressed by Richard Thornton's money or power. The first time they met, she told him his acquisition strategy was going to destroy the plant. They were standing on the factory floor. Richard in his $1,000 suit, Maria in her work coveralls, safety goggles pushed up on her forehead. Richard's team of consultants had just presented their restructuring plan: cut the workforce by 40%, outsource production to Mexico, strip the patents, and sell them off. "You'll kill it," Maria said, flatly, not bothering with the deference his position usually commanded. "This plant works because of the people. They have institutional knowledge, relationships, pride in their work. You cut them, you cut the heart out. What's left will be just another failed factory in a city full of them." Richard's consultant sputtered with indignation. No one spoke to Richard Thornton like that. But Richard was intrigued. "What would you do?" he asked. "Invest," she said simply. "New equipment, training, promote from within. Give people a reason to care, and they'll make you more money than your spreadsheets ever could." That's inefficient. That's human. Richard stared at her, this young woman with fire in her eyes, who looked at him not as a titan or a savior, but as a man making a mistake. "Show me your plan," he said. She did. Over the next 3 weeks, Maria Rodriguez presented Richard Thornton with the most comprehensive, insightful operational plan he had ever seen. It wasn't just numbers and projections. It was about people, about community, about building something that lasted. It was everything his Harvard MBA had never taught him. They started meeting every evening after the factory closed. Officially, they were working. Unofficially, they were falling in love. Richard couldn't explain it. He couldn't justify it. He was a married man, a father, a pillar of Chicago society. She was an employee, half his age, from a completely different world. Every rational part of his brain told him to stop, to maintain professional distance, to go home to his perfectly arranged life. But when he was with Maria, he felt alive for the first time in years. She challenged him. She saw him, not Richard Thornton, the billionaire, but Richard, the man. She made him laugh. She made him think. She made him feel. By the end of summer, they were having an affair. They were careful, meticulous. Richard rented a small apartment in a neighborhood where no one knew him. They met there twice a week, stolen hours in the middle of his perfectly scheduled life. He told his wife he was working late. He told his board he was overseeing the acquisition personally. He told himself it was temporary, that he would end it soon, that he could walk away. He was lying. In the apartment, away from the world, they built a life. She cooked for him simple meals from her childhood, flavors he had never experienced in all his expensive restaurants. He talked to her about the business, about his frustrations, about the suffocating weight of expectation.
She told him about her family, about her dreams of going back to school, of becoming an engineer, of building things that mattered. "Why don't you?" he asked her one night as they lay tangled together on the narrow bed. "Because dreams don't pay the rent," she said simply. "Because my family needs me. Because people like me don't get second chances." "I could help you," Richard said. "I could pay for school. I could—" "No," Maria said firmly. "I don't want your money, Richard. I want you, but I won't be bought." It was the most respect anyone had ever shown him. The affair lasted 6 months, 6 months of stolen time, of lies and secrets, of the happiest and most guilt-ridden period of Richard's life. He was living 2 lives, and both of them were killing him. In December, Maria told him she was pregnant. Richard sat in the apartment, his head in his hands, his entire world collapsing. "We have to deal with this," he said. "Deal with it?" Maria's voice was ice. "I didn't mean, I meant we have to figure out what to do. I have a wife, I have children, I have a company. If this comes out, it will destroy everything." "Everything?" Maria repeated. "Your reputation, your marriage, your perfect life?"
Yes. What about me? What about our child? I'll take care of you, Richard said desperately. Money, whatever you need. I'll set up a trust. You'll never have to worry about— Get out. Maria, get out, she screamed, and he had never seen such fury, such heartbreak, such contempt. You think this is about money? You think I'm some problem you can solve with a checkbook? I loved you. I thought you loved me. I do love you, Richard said, and he was crying now, this powerful man who never cried, tears streaming down his face. I do, but I can't. I have responsibilities. You have a choice, Maria said coldly. Me and this child, or them. Choose. Richard Thornton stood in that small apartment, his heart being torn in 2 directions, and he made the choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He chose his existing family. He chose his reputation. He chose the empire. He left. He gave Maria Rodriguez a severance package of $2 million, paid through an intermediary, with the condition that she sign a non-disclosure agreement. He never saw her again. He told himself it was for the best, that he was protecting everyone, that time would heal the wound. He told himself many lies. Maria took the money. She moved to a different neighborhood. She had the baby alone, a daughter, on August 14, 1996. She named her Elena, after her own mother. She raised her alone, working as an industrial engineer, never marrying, never telling Elena who her father was, until Elena turned 18. On her 18th birthday, Maria Rodriguez sat her daughter down and told her everything, about Richard Thornton, about the affair, about the choice he made, about the money she had accepted and invested carefully, the money that had paid for Elena's education, their apartment, their life. "He didn't want you," Maria said, her voice heavy with old pain. "But I did. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and you deserved to know the truth." Elena had sat very still, absorbing the information. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just absorbed it, the way she absorbed everything, filed it away, processed it. "What do you want me to do with this?" she asked. "Nothing," Maria said. "I'm telling you because you have a right to know. But I don't want revenge. I don't want his money. I don't want anything from him. I just want you to know who you are, all of who you are." But Elena had other ideas. For the next 10 years, Elena Rodriguez had been watching, learning, preparing. She got a degree in mechanical engineering. She deliberately took a job at Thornton Industries, using her mother's maiden name, Garcia, on the application so no one would make the connection. She worked her way up from the assembly line to master mechanic. She watched Richard Thornton from a distance, this stranger who was her father. She watched his children, her half-siblings, living their privileged lives. She watched the empire built on steel and secrets. And she waited. She waited for her moment, for her chance, not for revenge exactly, though there was some of that,
but for something deeper. She wanted acknowledgement. She wanted him to see her, really see her, the daughter he had abandoned. She wanted him to know what he had thrown away. She wanted him to pay, not with money, with truth. Now, sitting in the library of Thornton Manor, with 3 stunned faces staring at her, Elena realized her moment had arrived. But it wasn't the way she had imagined. Richard Thornton had summoned her. He had revealed her existence. He had, in his own twisted way, given her exactly what she wanted. The question was, why now? Victoria was the first to speak, her voice shaking with controlled fury. You had an affair, you had a child, and you hid it from us for nearly 30 years. Yes, Richard said simply. Why? Victoria demanded. Why hide her? Why not just divorce Mother and marry this Maria woman? Because I was a coward, because I chose my reputation over my heart, because I made a mistake that I regretted every single day since. A mistake, Victoria repeated. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. This is... She couldn't even find the words. She turned to Elena. Did you know? Have you known all along? Elena met her gaze steadily. I've known since I was 18. And you came to work here, at the plant? You've been working here for 4 years? Victoria's voice was rising. Have you been spying on us? Planning something? I wanted to meet him, Elena said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. I wanted to see the man who abandoned me. I wanted to understand why. And did you? Marcus asked, speaking for the first time since the revelation. He had stopped drinking, his bloodshot eyes suddenly sharp and focused. Did you understand why? Elena looked at Richard, at this dying old man in his wheelchair, and felt a complicated tangle of emotions she couldn't begin to untangle. No, she said honestly, I don't think I ever will. James Chen had been silent through all of this, his hands clasped in his lap, his expression carefully neutral. Now he spoke, his voice quiet. Mr. Thornton, why are you telling us this now, after all these years? Why now?
Richard looked at his CFO, at the young man he had mentored, and nodded. Because I'm dying. Because I'm out of time. And because Elena deserves better than to be a secret. She deserves to know her family. And you all deserve to know the truth. The truth? Victoria said bitterly. The truth is that you're a liar and a hypocrite. You spent my entire childhood lecturing me about honor, about the Thornton name, about our legacy, and all the while you were... I know what I am, Richard interrupted, his voice cracking. Believe me, Victoria, I know. And I don't expect forgiveness from any of you. But I do expect you to be civil to Elena. She is your sister. She is a Thornton, whether you like it or not. She's not a Thornton, Victoria spat. She doesn't have the name. She wasn't raised in this family. She doesn't... I don't want the name, Elena said quietly, but her voice cut through Victoria's tirade like a knife. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from any of you. I came here today because he asked me to. That's all. Then why are you here? Victoria challenged. What do you want? Elena looked at her half-sister, this polished, perfect woman who had everything Elena never had, and felt a surge of complex emotion, anger, jealousy, but also something else, curiosity. I wanted to see you, she said simply. All of you. I wanted to see the family I never had. Is that so hard to understand? Marcus laughed again, that bitter, broken laugh. Oh, trust me, you didn't miss much. This family is a disaster. Welcome to the nightmare. Margaret, enough, she said sharply. She had been standing quietly by the door, but now she moved forward, her expression gentle as she looked at Elena. Elena, I want you to know that I've known about you since the beginning. Your mother, Maria, she was a wonderful woman. I met her once, briefly, and I've been urging Richard to tell the truth for years. I'm glad he finally has. Elena looked at Margaret with surprise. You knew? I manage Richard's life. I know everything.
Margaret smiled sadly. "And I'm sorry. Sorry that you had to grow up without a father. Sorry that you were kept secret. You deserved better." "Thank you," Elena said, and to her horror she felt tears prickling at her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. Richard was watching Elena with an expression of such profound regret that it was almost painful to witness. "Elena," he said, his voice hoarse, "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I need you to understand something. When I left your mother, when I made that choice, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting my family, my children. I thought I was being responsible." "You thought wrong," Elena said flatly. I know that now. But by the time I realized my mistake, it was too late. Your mother wouldn't speak to me. She made it clear she wanted nothing to do with me, and I convinced myself that it was better that way, that you were better off without me. I was. My mother was 10 times the parent you ever were." Richard flinched as if she had struck him. "You're right. She was. Maria was... She was extraordinary, and I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me because I was afraid of scandal, afraid of losing my position, afraid of what people would think." "And now?" asked Elena. "Why aren't you afraid now?" "Because I'm dying," Richard said simply, "and I've realized that reputation is worth nothing if you die knowing you lived a lie. I want my children to know each other. All of my children. I want you to have what I should have given you from the beginning, a family." "We're not a family," Victoria said coldly. "We're strangers connected by biology and lies." "James," quietly. It was the first time he had directly addressed her. "He's trying to make amends." "Amends?" Victoria turned on him. "James, you can't possibly be defending this. He lied to us for decades." "I'm not defending it," James said carefully. "I'm just saying, maybe we should listen. Maybe there's more to the story." "What more could there possibly be?" Victoria demanded. Richard and James exchanged a look. It was brief, barely a second, but Elena saw it. There was something there, something unspoken passing between them. "There's more," Richard said heavily. "But before I tell you the rest, I need to tell you about the will." The room went very still. "The will," Victoria repeated. "The will. You brought us here to talk about the will?" "In part," Richard admitted. "I want you all to know what I've decided. I want to explain my reasoning. I want—" "Just tell us," Marcus interrupted, leaning forward. "How much did the bastard daughter get?" "Marcus!" Margaret snapped. "What? That's what we're all thinking. That's why we're here. He's carved up the empire, and we want to know who gets what piece." Richard looked at his son with something close to pity. "You're right. That is why you're here. All of you, except Elena. She's the only one who came for the right reasons." He pulled a thin folder from the table beside his wheelchair and handed it to Margaret. She began distributing copies to each of them. "This is my last will and testament. It was finalized last week with my attorneys. It's ironclad. You can contest it if you like, but you'll lose. I've made sure of that." Elena opened her copy with trembling hands. The legalese was dense, but certain numbers jumped out at her. Large numbers, impossible numbers. "The estate is valued at approximately $3.2 billion, Richard said, his voice businesslike now, the dying man replaced by the CEO. "That includes the company, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolio, the art collection, and various other assets. I've structured the distribution as follows."
He paused, looking at each of them in turn. "Victoria, you receive 40% of Thornton Industries stock, making you the single largest shareholder and chairman of the board. You also receive Thornton Manor, the Park Avenue apartment, and $50 million in cash." Victoria's face was carefully blank. "And the rest?" "Marcus, you receive 20% of the company's stock,
the house in Aspen, and $50 million in cash, plus a trust that will provide you with $5 million per year for life, provided you complete a treatment program for alcoholism within 6 months. Marcus's face went red. "You're making me jump through hoops even from the grave." "I'm giving you a chance," Richard said. "Take it or leave it." He turned to James. "James, you receive 10% of company stock and remain a CFO with a seat on the board. You also receive $10 million in cash and the penthouse in Thornton Tower." James nodded, his expression unreadable. Finally, Richard looked at Elena. "And Elena, you receive 25% of the company stock, making you the second largest shareholder after Victoria. You receive the lake house, the property in Montana, and $100 million in cash. You also receive your mother's personal effects, which I've kept all these years, and a letter I wrote to her that I never sent." The silence was deafening. Victoria stood up slowly, her hands shaking. You're giving this stranger who we just met?" "My daughter," Richard corrected. "Your sister. 25% of the company? A quarter of the empire we built." "The empire I built," Richard said sharply. "And yes, she's my daughter. She deserves her share." "This is insane," Victoria said, her voice rising. "She knows nothing about the business. She's a mechanic. She has no experience, no education in management, no—" "She has a degree in engineering from Northwestern. She has 4 years of experience at our plant, where she's been one of the top performers. She has intelligence, integrity, and more importantly, she has something neither of you have." He looked at Victoria and Marcus. "She has appreciation. She doesn't take it for granted." "Because she's never had it," Victoria shouted. You can't just insert her into this family and expect us to accept it. You can't buy her way in with company stock." "I'm not buying anything," Richard said tiredly. "I'm giving her what should have been hers from the beginning. And you'll work with her, Victoria, because you're smart enough to know that you need her. 25% is enough to block any major decision. If you want to run the company, you'll need her vote." Victoria looked like she might explode. She turned to Elena, her blue eyes blazing. "Did you know about this? Did you know he was going to do this?" "No," Elena said, still staring at the papers in her hands. Her whole body was numb. $100 million, 25% of a multi-billion-dollar company. The lake house, where she had once, as a child, watched from a distance as the Thornton family vacationed, never knowing they were her family. "I swear I had no idea." "Convenient," Marcus muttered. "It's not convenient," Elena snapped, finding her voice. "It's terrifying. I don't want this. I don't want to be part of your corporate battles and your family drama. I just wanted—" "What?" Victoria challenged. "What did you want?" "I wanted him to see me," Elena shouted, the words ripping out of her. "I wanted him to acknowledge that I exist, that I mattered. The throwing me away was wrong. That's all. I never asked for money. I never asked for any of this." Richard was watching her, tears streaming down his gaunt face. "I see you, Elena. I've always seen you, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The silence fell again. Elena was breathing hard, her emotions raw and exposed. Victoria was rigid with fury. Marcus was staring at his drink. James was watching everyone with that careful, analytical gaze. And then Margaret spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. "There's one more thing." Everyone turned to look at her. "Richard," she said gently, "you need to tell them the rest." "Margaret," Richard began. "No, you brought everyone here for the truth. Tell them all of it." Richard closed his eyes. He looked in that moment older than his 70 years. He looked like a man who had been carrying an impossible weight for too long. "There's more," Richard said finally. "Something I've kept from all of you. Something that changes everything.
"What now?" Victoria asked, her voice dripping with bitter sarcasm. "Do we have another secret sibling? A secret twin? What?" Richard opened his eyes and looked directly at James Chen. "James is not Margaret's nephew. James is Margaret's son, and he's also my son. James Chen is Elena's half-brother. He's your half-brother. James Chen is Thornton." "James is a Thornton? So we've got Elena, and now James? That's 2 secret children. But here's the question. How many more are out there? Like this video if you think Richard has even more secrets hiding, and subscribe because you're going to want to see how this all ends. The next revelation will blow your mind.
The words hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't yet detonated. For 3 full seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. And then the explosion came. "What?" Victoria's scream was primal, raw. She staggered backward, her hand clutching the back of a chair for support. "James? James is your son?" Marcus dropped his glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor, whiskey and crystal spreading like a stain. He just stared, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Elena felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. She looked at James, this man she had worked alongside for 4 years, this stranger who was apparently her brother, and saw her own shock reflected back at her. But James himself didn't look shocked. He looked relieved. "You knew," Elena whispered, understanding dawning. "You knew about me. That text message in the garage, that was you." James nodded slowly, his careful mask finally cracking. "I've known about you for 6 years," he said quietly, "since I was 29. That's when my mother told me the truth." All eyes turned to Margaret Chen. She stood by the door, her composure finally breaking, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Explain," Victoria said, her voice dangerously calm now, the kind of calm that preceded violence. "Explain right now how my father's executive assistant is also his mistress and the mother of his secret son." "I was never his mistress," Margaret said, her voice gaining strength. "It happened once, 35 years ago, one time, and it changed everything." Richard gestured weakly. "Let me tell it, please. It's my story to tell." "No," Margaret said firmly. "It's mine. You've told enough stories, Richard. Let me tell this one." She walked to the center of the room, standing tall despite her tears. She looked at each of them in turn, her gaze lingering longest on James. "I was 27 years old when I started working for Richard. I had just finished my MBA from University of Chicago. I was ambitious, smart, and desperate to prove myself. Richard hired me as his executive assistant, and I was grateful. Jobs like that didn't go to women like me in 1990, especially not immigrant women. "You're Korean," Victoria said, as if just realizing it. "I came to America when I was 12. Margaret continued. "My parents owned a dry cleaning shop in Chinatown. I worked there every day after school, every weekend. I put myself through college, through business school. When Richard offered me the job, it was everything I had worked for." She paused, gathering her thoughts. Richard's marriage to Catherine was already falling apart. Everyone could see it. They were cold to each other, distant, but Richard was always professional with me, always respectful. For 5 years we worked together, just worked. And then what? Marcus demanded. Then his mother died, softly. Richard's mother, Elizabeth. She had a stroke. She died in the hospital, and Richard was there. He called me at 3 in the morning, asked me to come, not as his assistant, as his friend. Richard was staring at the floor, his jaw clenched. "I went," Margaret continued. "I sat with him in the hospital. He cried. I'd never seen him cry before. He talked about his mother, about how she was the only person who really knew him, who really loved him without conditions. He talked about how lonely he was, how trapped, and I understood, because I was lonely too." "So you slept with him," Victoria said flatly.
Yes, Margaret said, without shame. Once, one night, we were both grieving, both vulnerable, and it happened. The next morning we both knew it was a mistake, not because it wasn't meaningful, but because it could never happen again. I was his employee, he was married, we had to pretend it never happened. But you got pregnant, Elena said quietly. Margaret nodded. I found out 6 weeks later. I was terrified. I thought about not telling him, about just disappearing, but I couldn't do that. I told him, and Richard, she looked at him, and there was something tender in her expression, something ancient and complicated. Richard did what he thought was right. What did he do? James asked. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. He paid for everything, Margaret said. He set up a trust for your education, for your future. He made sure you wanted for nothing, but he also asked me to keep you secret, to raise you as my nephew. He said it was to protect you, to protect your future, so you wouldn't grow up in the shadow of scandal. To protect himself, you mean, Victoria spat. Maybe, Margaret admitted. I don't know. I told myself I was doing it for you, James. I told myself you'd have a better life if no one knew. Richard made sure you had every opportunity. He mentored you, guided your career. He gave you everything except his name. Everything except the truth, James said quietly. Yes, Margaret whispered. I'm so sorry, James. I'm so sorry. James stood up slowly. He walked to the window, looking out at the lake, his back to all of them. When he spoke, his voice was tight with suppressed emotion. I've known for 6 years, he said, 6 years that I've been working here, sitting in board meetings, making decisions about this company, knowing that I'm a Thornton and pretending I'm not. Do you know what that's like? To look at your siblings and know they don't know you're their brother? To watch your father from across a conference table and call him sir instead of dad? He turned around and his eyes were blazing. I've been living a lie. We've all been living a lie. This entire family is built on secrets and cowardice. Why didn't you say anything? Elena asked. If you knew, why didn't you tell them? Because my mother asked me not to, James said, looking at Margaret, because she said it wasn't time, that Richard wanted to tell the truth, but he needed to do it his way, in his time. Turns out his time was when he was dying. How convenient. James, Richard began.
No, James said, cutting him off. I don't want to hear it. I don't want your explanations or your excuses. You had 35 years to tell the truth. You chose not to, and now you're dying and suddenly you're desperate for absolution. Well, I'm not here to give it to you. Neither am I, Elena said quietly. She stood up, clutching the will papers in her hand. I came here thinking I wanted answers, thinking I wanted to be acknowledged. But this, she gestured at the room, at all of them. This is toxic. This family is poisonous. I don't want any part of it. Elena, wait, Richard said, reaching out a trembling hand. No, Elena said firmly. You gave me up. You threw me away. And now you want to buy me back with money and stock and properties? It doesn't work like that. You can't undo 30 years of absence with a line in your will. She looked at Victoria and Marcus. And you two. I know you hate me right now. I know you think I'm here to steal your inheritance or destroy your family. But I'm not. I never was. I just wanted to know where I came from. Now I do, and I wish I didn't. She turned to James. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you've been carrying this secret. I'm sorry we couldn't have met as siblings, as equals. But I can't do this. I can't be part of this. She walked toward the door. Margaret stepped aside, tears still streaming down her face. Elena, James called out. Wait, please. Elena stopped but didn't turn around. I know you're angry, James said, walking toward her. I'm angry too. But don't walk away. Not yet. Because if you leave now, they win. Richard wins. He gets to keep his secrets buried, his sins hidden. But if you stay, if we both stay, we can force the truth into the light. We can make him face what he did, what he stole from us. Elena turned slowly. What are you talking about? James's expression was hard, calculating. The will, 25% for you, 10% for me. That's 35% combined. Victoria has 40. If we work together, we can block her. We can force a vote on every major decision. We can make her listen to us. We have power now, Elena. Real power. Don't throw it away." Victoria stood up, her face pale. "You can't be serious. You're talking about sabotaging the company." "I'm talking about claiming what's ours," James said coldly. "What was always ours. You and Marcus, you grew up with everything. Private schools, trust funds, the Thornton name. Elena and I got nothing but secrets and lies. Well, now the rules have changed." "James, this isn't you talking," Margaret said desperately. "You're upset. "I'm clear-headed for the first time in 6 years," James interrupted. "Mom, I asked you to keep quiet, to wait, to be patient. I did, and what did it get me? More lies, more secrets. I'm done waiting." Marcus suddenly laughed, that broken, bitter laugh again. "Oh, this is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful. The golden boy, the perfect CFO, Richard's little protege, finally showing his true colors. You're just like the rest of us, aren't you? Angry and damaged and desperate for revenge." "Shut up, Marcus," James said. "Why? It's true. You want to hurt him." Marcus gestured at Richard. "You want to make him pay for abandoning you. Well, get in line. We all do." "This isn't about revenge," James said through gritted teeth. "Isn't it?" Marcus challenged. "Then what is it about?" James was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "It's about justice. It's about making sure Elena and I aren't treated like dirty secrets anymore. It's about recognition." Elena was staring at James, seeing him clearly for the first time. He wasn't the calm, composed CFO she thought she knew. He was angry, wounded, dangerous. "I don't want a war," Elena said quietly. "I just want to go home." "You can't," James said. "Don't you see? The moment you accept that inheritance, the moment you become a shareholder, you're in this, whether you like it or not. You're a Thornton now, and Thorntons don't run away." "I'm not a Thornton," Elena said. "I'm a Rodriguez. That's my mother's name. That's the name I chose." "Then give it all back," Victoria said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. She had regained her composure, her expression cold and calculating. "The stock, the money, the properties. Sign it all back to the estate. Walk away clean. If you really don't want to be part of this family, prove it." It was a test, a challenge, and everyone in the room knew it. Elena looked at the papers in her hand. $100 million, 25% of a multi-billion-dollar empire. Her mother had raised her on $2 million, invested carefully, stretched to cover a lifetime. This was 50 times that. This was generational wealth. This was security for every descendant she would ever have. This was blood money. "Give me 24 hours, Elena said finally. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow." "Elena," James started. 24 hours. I need to think. I need to talk to my mother." "Your mother is dying," Richard said suddenly. All eyes turned to him. He looked at Elena, his expression agonized. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but you should know. Maria has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She has weeks left, maybe days." Elena felt the room tilt. "What? No, that's not... She would have told me." "She didn't want you to know," Richard said. "She called Margaret 2 months ago, asked her to keep it secret. She said she didn't want you making decisions based on obligation or pity. She wanted you to live your life." Elena couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. Her mother was dying. Her father was dying. She had siblings she never knew existed. She had wealth she never wanted. She had a family that hated her. It was too much. "I have to go," she whispered. "I have to see her."
"Elena!" Multiple voices called after her, but she was already running. Out of the library, through the grand hallway, out the front door into the cold October air. She got into her truck, started the engine with shaking hands, and drove. She drove back to the small apartment on the south side she shared with her mother. She took the stairs 2 at a time, burst through the door, and found Maria Rodriguez sitting in her armchair by the window, exactly where Elena had left her that morning. Maria looked up, and Elena saw it immediately, the truth Richard had told her. Her mother's skin was yellowed, her body thin, her eyes tired. How had Elena not seen it before? How had she been so blind? "Mija," Maria said gently, "you're home early."
Elena collapsed to her knees in front of her mother's chair and started sobbing, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Maria stroked her daughter's hair, making soft, soothing sounds. "You know," Maria said quietly, "he told you." "Why didn't you tell me?" Elena choked out between sobs. "Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" "Because you would have stopped living your life," Maria said simply. "You would have stayed here, taken care of me, sacrificed everything, and I didn't want that for you. I wanted you to be free." "I should have been here. I should have—" "You were exactly where you needed to be," Maria interrupted gently. "You were at that meeting. You met your father. You met your siblings. You finally got the answers you've been looking for." Elena pulled back, looking up at her mother through blurred vision. "He wants to give me money, a lot of money, and part of the company. He wants me to be part of the family." Maria was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want?" "I don't know," Elena whispered. "I thought I wanted acknowledgement, recognition, but now that I have it, it doesn't feel the way I thought it would. They hate me, Mama. Victoria and Marcus, they hate me for existing. And James, my brother, he's so angry. He wants to use me as a weapon against them." "And what about Richard?" Maria asked. "He's dying. He says he's sorry. But is sorry enough? Is it enough to erase 30 years? Maria sighed deeply. She looked out the window at the city, at the life she had built without him. "When I met Richard Thornton," she said slowly, "I thought he was the bravest man I'd ever met. He saw problems and he fixed them. He made decisions. He took action. But when it came to us, to you, he became a coward, and I hated him for that. For a long time, I hated him." "Do you still?" Elena asked. "No," Maria said. "Hate takes too much energy, and I don't have much energy left." She smiled sadly. "I forgave him, Mija. Not for him, for me, because carrying that anger was poisoning me. It was making me bitter." "How do you forgive someone for abandoning you?" "You remember that they're human, flawed and scared, and capable of terrible mistakes. You remember that hurt people, and you choose not to let their mistake define your life." "But he's offering me money, his will." "Take it," Maria said firmly. Elena stared at her mother in shock. "What?" "Take it," Maria repeated. "Every penny, every share of stock, every property, take it all." "But you said you didn't want his money. You said—" "Because I didn't want his money, because I didn't want to be bought. I didn't want my silence purchased. But you, Mija, you are not being bought. You are being given what's rightfully yours. You are his daughter. You deserve your inheritance. Take it." "I don't need it," Elena protested. "We've been fine without it." "Fine is not the same as flourishing. Elena, you are brilliant. You have dreams, dreams of starting your own engineering firm, dreams of building things that matter, dreams that require capital and connections and resources. This is your chance. Don't throw it away because of pride." "But the family will adjust, or they won't. That's not your problem. Your problem is deciding what kind of life you want to live. Do you want to keep hiding, keep pretending you're nobody, or do you want to step into the light and claim your place in the world?" Elena was silent, her mind racing. "There's something else," Maria said quietly. "Something I need to tell you before I die." Elena's heart clenched. "Mama, don't talk like that." "Hush. Listen." Maria took her daughter's hand. "When Richard left me, when he chose his other family over us, I was devastated. I took his money because I had you to think about, but I made a promise to myself. I promised that I would raise you to be better than him, stronger than him, braver than him, and I have. You are everything he should have been, but wasn't." Tears were streaming down Elena's face again. "So when you walk back into that house tomorrow, when you sit across from him and his other children, I want you to remember something. You are not the bastard daughter. You are not the secret. You are not the mistake. You are Maria Rodriguez's daughter, and we Rodriguezes, we don't beg for scraps. We take what's ours and we build empires." Elena let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. "Mama!" "Take the money," Maria said fiercely. "Take the stock. Take every single thing he's offering, and then you use it. Not for revenge, not to hurt anyone, but to build something beautiful, something that would make him proud and make me proud. Show them what a Rodriguez can do with a Thornton's resources." Elena buried her face in her mother's lap and cried until she had no tears left. And when she finally looked up, her eyes were clear. "Okay, Mama. Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it all." Maria smiled, stroking her daughter's hair one more time. "That's my girl."
Elena returned to Thornton Manor the next morning at exactly 10 a.m. She didn't sleep. She had spent the night sitting with her mother, talking, remembering, preparing. Maria had fallen asleep around 3 a.m., and Elena had sat watching her breathe, memorizing every detail of her face, knowing their time was running out. When she pulled up to the manor, she was different. She wore clean jeans and a leather jacket, her hair pulled back, but her posture was different. She stood taller. She met the eyes of the security guard at the gate without flinching. She was Maria Rodriguez's daughter, and she was done hiding. Margaret met her at the door. "Elena, thank you for coming back." "Is everyone here?" Elena asked. "In the library. They've been waiting." Elena nodded and walked through the house with purpose. She pushed open the library doors without knocking. They were all there. Richard in his wheelchair, looking even more frail than yesterday. Victoria in a sharp black suit, her armor. Marcus nursing coffee, his hands shaking slightly. And James standing by the window, his expression unreadable. "Elena," Richard said, his voice hoarse with hope and fear. "You came back." "I did," Elena said. She walked to the center of the room and looked at each of them. "I've made my decision." "And?" Victoria asked, her voice tight. "I'm accepting the inheritance," Elena said. "All of it. The stock, the money, the properties. Everything you offered, I'm taking." Victoria's face went hard. "I see. But I have conditions," Elena continued. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her jacket pocket. "I spent last night talking to my mother and writing this. These are my terms. If you want me to join this family, if you want me to be a shareholder, these are non-negotiable." She handed the paper to Richard, who unfolded it with trembling hands. He read it, his eyes widening. He looked up at her, something like respect dawning in his expression. "Read it aloud," Victoria demanded. Richard cleared his throat and began to read. 1. Richard Thornton will publicly acknowledge Elena Rodriguez as his daughter within 30 days. A press release will be issued. There will be no more secrets, no more hiding. 2. Maria Rodriguez's name will be added to the memorial wing of Thornton Tower, alongside the other significant figures in company history. Her contributions to the company during the 1995 acquisition will be properly credited and documented. 3. Elena Rodriguez will join the board of directors immediately, with full voting rights and access to all company information. She will not be treated as a silent partner or a figurehead. 4. Thornton Industries will establish the Maria Rodriguez Engineering Scholarship, a full-ride program for women from underrepresented communities who want to study engineering. Initial funding, $10 million annually. 5. Elena Rodriguez reserves her right to sell her shares to a third party if she determines that remaining a shareholder is not in her best interests. This right cannot be blocked or restricted by other shareholders. 6. Elena Rodriguez's mother, Maria Rodriguez, will receive full medical care at the best facility in the country for her remaining time, all expenses paid by the estate. Elena will have unlimited leave to be with her mother. Richard finished reading and looked up at Elena. "These are your terms?" "Yes," Elena said, "non-negotiable." Victoria stood up. "Absolutely not. You want us to publicly announce that our father had an affair? You want to put your mother's name on our building?
You want to join the board with zero experience? This is extortion." "No," Elena said calmly. "This is respect. Respect for my mother, who was extraordinary and deserves to be remembered. Respect for me as a daughter and a shareholder. And respect for every other woman who's been erased from history because she loved the wrong man." "The scholarship is fine," Victoria said grudgingly. "The medical care is fine. But the rest is non-negotiable," Elena repeated. "All of it or none of it. Your choice." "You realize if you refuse," James said quietly, speaking for the first time, "she can still accept the inheritance under the original will terms. She doesn't need your permission. She's offering you a deal that actually limits her rights in some ways, in exchange for transparency and respect. It's more than fair." Victoria turned on James. "Oh, so now you're on her side?" "I'm on the side of honesty, something this family has never valued." "Fine," Victoria spat. "Fine. You want to humiliate us publicly? You want everyone to know about your mother, about the affair? Do it, but don't expect me to play happy family with you. Don't expect me to pretend we're sisters." "I don't," Elena said quietly. "I don't expect anything from you except basic professional respect. That's all." She turned to Richard. "Do you accept my terms?" Richard was crying again, silent tears streaming down his face. "Yes, Elena. Yes, I accept. I accept all of it, and I'm grateful, more grateful than you know." "Don't be grateful," Elena said, her voice hard. "Be better. In whatever time you have left, be the father you should have been 30 years ago. That's all I want from you." Richard nodded, unable to speak. Suddenly, Marcus stood up. "Well, this is all very touching, but I have a question for our new sister." He swayed slightly, steadying himself on the back of the chair. "What are you planning to do with your 25%? Are you going to be an active participant, or are you going to be a silent partner who shows up for dividends?" "I'm going to be active, very active. I'm going to learn everything about this company, and then I'm going to help modernize it. The manufacturing plants are running on equipment from the 1980s. The safety protocols are outdated. The environmental standards are barely compliant. This company is living in the past, and it's going to die there unless someone drags it into the 21st century." "And you think you can do that?" Marcus scoffed. "You're a mechanic." "I'm an engineer," Elena corrected. "And I've spent 4 years on your factory floors, watching this company waste money and potential because the people at the top are too disconnected to see what's happening at the bottom. Yes, I think I can do that, whether you like it or not." Victoria was staring at Elena with a new expression, not quite respect, but something close to it, wariness perhaps, recognition that Elena wasn't the victim she had assumed.
"You've been planning this," Victoria said slowly. "Haven't you? You didn't just stumble into that job 4 years ago. You've been watching us, learning about the company, preparing." "Yes," Elena admitted, "I have. I wanted to understand what I was denied. I wanted to see if this empire was worth fighting for. And you know what I found? I found a company with incredible bones and terrible leadership. I found workers who care more about quality than the executives who cash their bonuses. I found potential being squandered by people who inherited power instead of earning it." The last part was directed at Victoria, and it landed like a slap. Victoria's face flushed red. "How dare you?" "I dare because it's true," Elena said. "You went to Harvard Business School. You built your own venture capital firm. You're brilliant, Victoria, but you've been running away from this company, from this family, for 15 years. You don't want to run Thornton Industries. You want to punish Richard for being a bad father. And that's not a business strategy. That's therapy you haven't had." The silence that followed was nuclear. Marcus started laughing. "Oh my God, I love her! I actually love her!" Victoria looked like she might murder Elena on the spot, but then something shifted in her expression. The fury faded, replaced by something colder, harder. Respect. "You're right," Victoria said quietly. I don't want to run this company. I never have. I wanted to prove I could build something on my own, something he didn't give me. But Richard is dying, and someone has to take the helm. So here I am." "Here we are," Elena corrected. "You're not doing this alone anymore. Like it or not, we're partners now." Victoria looked at James. "And you? What's your play in all this?" James was quiet for a long moment. "I want what I've always wanted. To be acknowledged, to be seen, to be family, not just an employee." He looked at Richard. "But I also want this company to survive. I've given it 10 years of my life. I'm not going to watch it crumble because we're too busy fighting each other to see the threats outside." "What threats?" Marcus asked. "Chandler Industries," James said. "They've been quietly buying up our suppliers. They're positioning themselves for a hostile takeover. They'll make their move within 6 months, probably as soon as Richard dies and the estate is in transition. If we're not unified, if we're too busy with internal drama, they'll eat us alive." Everyone turned to look at James. "You knew about this?" Victoria demanded. "I've known for 3 months. I've been trying to tell Richard, but he's been too focused on dying and confessing his sins to pay attention to the business." "Why didn't you tell me?" Victoria asked. "Because you've been in San Francisco, ignoring every call from the board. You haven't been engaged, Victoria. None of you have, except Richard, and now he's too sick to fight." Richard was staring at James with something like horror. "Chandler? Robert Chandler?" "His son, Daniel. He's been building a war chest. He wants revenge for the acquisition you blocked in 2012, and he's been patient." "How bad is it?" Victoria asked, her business instincts finally kicking in. "Bad," James said. "They control 30% of our supply chain. If they squeeze, we're crippled. Our stock price is vulnerable, our board is weak, and with Richard's death, there will be a 6-month period where the estate is in transition, where control is unclear. That's when they'll strike." "Can we stop them?" Elena asked. James looked at her, then at Victoria. "Maybe, if we work together, if we present a unified front, if we make it clear that Thornton Industries has strong leadership prepared to take over. But if we're divided, if you two are fighting over the company while Marcus drinks himself to death, then no, we can't stop them." "Then we work together," Elena said simply. "Victoria, I know you hate me. I know you think I'm an intruder, an outsider, a threat, and maybe I am, but I'm also your best option right now, because I have nothing to lose. I didn't grow up with the Thornton name. I don't care about its legacy or its reputation. I only care about making sure my mother's memory is honored and making sure this company doesn't destroy the lives of the people who work for it." "What are you suggesting?" Elena asked. "I'm suggesting we make a deal, right here, right now. You want control? Fine. You're chairman of the board. You run the strategy. But I get operational oversight. I get to modernize the plants, improve safety, upgrade equipment. James stays as CFO and becomes COO because we need his knowledge and his leadership. And Marcus—" She turned to look at Richard's son, who was watching all of this with bloodshot eyes. "Marcus, you need help, real help. Not because I'm judging you or because I think you're weak, but because you're hurting yourself and everyone around you. If you complete treatment, if you get sober, then we find a role for you. Marketing maybe, or corporate relations. You have skills. You're charming when you're not drunk. We need that." Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Richard. "She's not wrong. I am hurting. I have been for years. And you," he pointed at his father, "you made me feel like I was never good enough, like I was always second to Victoria, always the disappointment. But maybe she's right. Maybe that's just an excuse I've been using to justify giving up." "Marcus," Richard whispered. "I'll do the treatment," Marcus said abruptly. "Not for you, for me, because I'm tired of being this person. I'm tired of being the family failure." "You're not a failure," Richard said, his voice cracking. "You never were. I failed you. I failed all of you." "Yeah, you did, but that doesn't mean I have to keep failing myself." Elena felt a strange surge of hope. Maybe this could work.
Maybe they could salvage something from all this wreckage.
Victoria was thinking, calculating, her sharp mind processing the variables. Finally, she spoke. "Okay," she said. "We work together. Temporary alliance until we deal with Chandler. After that, we reassess. But I have my own condition, Elena." "What?" "You want your mother's name on the building. Fine. But I want yours on the letterhead. You want to be acknowledged as Richard's daughter? Then be his daughter publicly. No more hiding behind your mother's name. You're a Thornton. Act like it." Elena hesitated. "I don't want to erase my mother." "You're not," Victoria said. "Your legal name can stay Elena Rodriguez, but in business, in public, you'll be Elena Rodriguez Thornton. Hyphenated. Both families, both legacies." It was a compromise, an olive branch, the first real gesture of acceptance Victoria had made. "Deal," Elena said. She held out her hand. Victoria looked at it for a long moment, then took it. They shook, and something shifted in the room. Not warmth exactly, not friendship, but possibility. Richard watched his daughters, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Margaret stepped forward, her expression relieved. "I'll have the attorneys draw up the paperwork. The press release about Elena will go out next week. The scholarship will be announced simultaneously, and Elena's mother will be transferred to Northwestern Memorial's hospice unit immediately." "Thank you," Elena said quietly. James walked over to Elena. "You handled that well," he said. "I'm terrified," Elena admitted. "Good," James said. "That means you're smart. This is going to be brutal. Chandler won't go down without a fight. The board is going to resist change. The media is going to have a field day with the scandal. And our siblings," he glanced at Victoria and Marcus, "they're not going to make it easy." "I know," Elena said, "but my mother told me something last night. She said Rodriguez's don't beg for scraps. We take what's ours and we build empires. So that's what I'm going to do." James smiled, a real smile this time. "Then I guess we're doing this together, brother and sister." "Yeah," Elena said, feeling the weight of those words. "I guess we are." 3 weeks later, Elena stood in the lobby of Thornton Tower for the first time as an official member of the family. The press release had gone out the previous Monday, and the media firestorm had been exactly as James predicted. Billionaire's secret love child surfaces after 28 years. Thornton scandal, affair, abandonment, and a $100 million inheritance. The heir they never knew, Elena Rodriguez, joins Chicago's most powerful family. The tabloids had been merciless. The business press had been skeptical. The social pages had been vicious. But Elena had weathered it, keeping her head down, refusing interviews, letting the initial storm blow through. Her mother had seen the announcement. Maria had been in her hospice bed at Northwestern Memorial Unit, surrounded by flowers that Richard had sent, orchids, Maria's favorite. She had read the press release that acknowledged her by name, that honored her contribution to the company, that established a scholarship in her name. "You did it, mija," Maria had whispered, her voice weak but proud. "You made them see me. You made them remember me." "I love you, Mama," Elena had said, holding her frail hand. "I know," Maria had said. "I've always known. Now go. Go build your empire. Don't waste time sitting with a dying woman. I'll still be here when you get back." But she wasn't. Maria Rodriguez died peacefully in her sleep 2 days later, on a cold November morning. Elena had been in a board meeting when Margaret found her, when she delivered the news with gentle hands and tears in her eyes. Elena had excused herself, walked calmly to the bathroom, and collapsed. The funeral was small, intimate. Just Elena,
a few of Maria's colleagues from her engineering career, some neighbors from the old building. And, to Elena's surprise, Richard Thornton. He came in a wheelchair, attended by a nurse and Margaret. He looked skeletal, barely alive himself, but he came. He sat in the back of the chapel during the service, and when it was over, he wheeled himself to the casket. Elena watched from a distance as her father placed a single white rose on her casket and whispered something she couldn't hear. Then he wheeled himself to where Elena stood. "She was the best person I ever knew, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't fight for her. I'm sorry I let her go." "I know," Elena said. She didn't forgive him. She didn't think she ever would, but she understood him a little better now. "Thank you for coming. She deserved better than me, but she got something better. She got you." 2 days after the funeral, Elena walked into Thornton Tower with a black armband on her sleeve and steel in her spine. She was done mourning. She was done being the victim. She was done being apologetic for existing. She was Elena Rodriguez Thornton, and she had work to do. The board meeting was scheduled at 2 p.m. in the executive conference room on the 65th floor. It was Elena's first official board meeting, and every member knew it. They were watching her, waiting to see if she would crumble, if she would prove herself incompetent, if she would validate all their whispered doubts. Elena arrived 15 minutes early, carrying a leather portfolio her mother had given her when she graduated from Northwestern. She wore a charcoal gray suit, tailored and professional, her dark hair pulled back, her mother's small silver cross around her neck, the only jewelry she owned.
James was already there, reviewing documents. He looked up when she entered and nodded. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be," Elena said. Victoria arrived exactly on time, as always. She was in navy blue today, her armor of choice. She sat at the head of the table, the chairman's seat, and arranged her materials with precise movements. Marcus was there too, looking healthier than Elena had ever seen him. He had been in treatment for 2 weeks at a facility in Minnesota. He was sober, clear-eyed, and nervous as hell. He gave Elena a small nod. The other board members filed in. Thomas Wright, the general counsel, a silver-haired man with reptilian eyes. Sandra Okoye, head of operations, a brilliant Nigerian woman in her 50s who had worked her way up from the factory floor. David Park, head of sales, a slick corporate veteran. Karen Delacroix, head of human resources, a woman who looked like somebody's grandmother but had the instincts of a shark. And finally, Robert Cheneau, an outside director and the oldest member of the board at 73, a dinosaur from Richard's generation. They all stared at Elena, some with curiosity, some with thinly veiled hostility. "Good afternoon," Victoria said, calling the meeting to order. "Let's begin. First item, we have a new board member, Elena Rodriguez Thornton, representing 25% of shares as per Richard Thornton's will. Elena, would you like to introduce yourself?" It was a test, a ritual hazing. They wanted to see if she would stumble. Elena stood. She looked at each of them, making eye contact, holding it. "Thank you, Victoria. I'm Elena Rodriguez Thornton, and yes, I'm new to this board. I'm new to corporate governance. But I'm not new to Thornton Industries. I've worked in your South Side plant for 4 years. I've seen your operations from the ground level. I know where you're efficient and where you're wasteful. I know where you're innovative and where you're 40 years behind your competitors. And I'm here to make sure we fix the problems before they destroy this company." She sat down. Robert Cheneau snorted. "That's quite a speech from someone with no business training." "I have an engineering degree from Northwestern and an MBA from University of Chicago Night School. I completed the MBA while working full-time at your plant, so actually I do have business training, and unlike some people at this table, I also have operational experience." "Are you implying?" Cheneau began, his face reddening.
She's implying that you haven't set foot in a factory in 20 years, Robert, James interrupted smoothly, which is true. Elena, welcome to the board. Now, shall we move on to the actual business? Victoria allowed herself a small smile. Second item, Chandler Industries. James, you have the floor. James stood and activated the screen behind him. A presentation appeared, charts and graphs in stark black and white. Chandler Industries has been executing a multi-year strategy to destabilize Thornton. They started by acquiring our suppliers, quietly through shell companies and intermediaries. They now control approximately 35% of our raw material supply chain. He clicked to the next slide. Second, they've been recruiting our talent. In the last 18 months, we've lost 14 senior engineers and 23 mid-level managers to Chandler-affiliated companies. They're offering 20 to 30% salary bumps plus signing bonuses. They're systematically stripping our institutional knowledge. Another click. Third, they've been courting our major clients. Boeing, Caterpillar, and Ford have all received proposals from Chandler for products that compete directly with ours, at prices that are below cost. They're willing to lose money in the short term to steal our market share. How do we know all this? Sandra Okoye asked, leaning forward. Because I have a source inside Chandler, someone who disagrees with Daniel Chandler's methods and has been feeding me information. Who? David Park demanded. I'm not revealing that, but the information is solid. I've verified it through multiple channels. Victoria's eyes narrowed. What's their end game? What do they want? They want to force a crisis, drive down our stock price, disrupt our operations, create chaos. Then, when we're vulnerable, they make an acquisition offer, a hostile takeover dressed up as a rescue package. They get the company for 50 cents on the dollar, fire all of us, gut the workforce, and strip the assets. Over my dead body, Victoria said coldly. That's maybe sooner than you think, because they're planning to make their move in the next 60 days. They're waiting for Richard to die. Once he's gone, once the estate is officially in transition, that's when they strike. The room fell silent. Elena spoke up. What's our counter-strategy? James looked at her, then at Victoria. That's what we need to decide today. I have 3 scenarios. He clicked to a new slide. Scenario 1, defensive position. We shore up our defenses, lock in our suppliers with long-term contracts, offer retention packages to P employees, increase our cash reserves to ride out the price war. This is the conservative approach. It might work, but it's reactive. We're letting Chandler dictate the terms of the battle. Click. Scenario 2, aggressive counterattack. We go after Chandler's weaknesses. They're over-leveraged. They borrowed heavily to fund these acquisitions. We leak information about their financial instability to the press, to their creditors. We poach their clients. We sue them for tortious interference. We make them bleed. This is risky. It could escalate into a full corporate war that damages both companies. Click. Scenario 3, the nuclear option. We take the company private. A leveraged buyout funded by the family and a few trusted investors. We delist from the stock exchange, remove ourselves from the public market. Chandler can't launch a hostile takeover if there's no stock to buy. This protects the company, but it puts enormous capital and debt on our balance sheet. It's irreversible.
Victoria was studying the slides, her mind clearly racing through calculations. What do you recommend? Combination strategy, James said. Defensive measures immediately. Lock in suppliers, retention packages. Then, if Chandler still moves forward, we go nuclear. We have 60 days to arrange the financing for a buyout. If we move fast, we can pull it off before Richard dies. And if Richard dies before we can close the deal, Karen Delacroix asked. Then we have a problem, James admitted, because the estate transition could freeze decision-making for weeks. That's the window Chandler is counting on.
Elena had been listening intently, her engineering mind processing the problem like a design challenge. "What if we don't wait?" she said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Victoria asked. "What if we don't wait for Chandler to make their move?" Elena said, her words coming faster as the idea crystallized. "What if we strike first? What if we announce our intention to go private right now, today, before Chandler is ready? We surprise them. We take away their advantage." "We don't have the financing arranged," David Park objected. "So we announce that we're exploring strategic alternatives," Elena countered. "That's the language, right? The board is exploring strategic alternatives, including a potential management buyout. We make it public. We force Chandler to tip their hand. If they're planning a hostile bid, they'll have to accelerate their timeline, come at us before they're ready, or they'll back off entirely because they'll know we're prepared to fight." James was staring at her, his expression shifting from skepticism to consideration. "That could work," he said slowly. "It's aggressive, it's risky, but it puts them on defense instead of us. It also tanks our stock price. Announcing we're considering going private? Shareholders will panic. The price will drop." "Good," Elena said. "Lower stock price means cheaper buyout. We're the majority shareholders anyway. We're not trying to maximize return for the public investors. We're trying to save the company." Victoria was watching Elena with a new expression, calculation, respect. "You're thinking like a hostile actor," she said, "like someone who's willing to burn the house down to save it." "I'm thinking like someone who has nothing to lose," Elena corrected. "You all grew up with this company. You have emotional attachment. I don't. I see it as an engineering problem. How do we preserve the core structure while eliminating the threats? Sometimes that means controlled demolition." "I like it," Marcus said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. He had been silent through the entire meeting, but now he was leaning forward, engaged. "I like it because it's ballsy, because it's unexpected, because it's exactly what Dad would have done 30 years ago, back when he was a fighter instead of a corporate politician." Sandra Okoye nodded slowly. "I agree. I've been in operations for 20 years. I've watched this company get soft, get complacent. We need to be aggressive again. We need to remind people that Thornton Industries doesn't roll over." Victoria looked around the table. "All in favor of Elena's proposal, announcing we're exploring strategic alternatives, including a management buyout." Hands went up. James, Elena, Marcus, Sandra, even Karen Delacroix. Robert Chenot and David Park kept their hands down. "Majority carries," Victoria said. "We'll draft the announcement today, release it tomorrow morning before markets open. James, you'll handle the press. Elena, I want you to work with Sandra on the operational continuity plan. If this spooks our workforce, we need to reassure them immediately. Marcus," she paused, looking at her brother. "Marcus, I want you to manage the family messaging. Call our major investors, our allies. Make sure they understand this is strategic, not panic." Marcus blinked in surprise. "You're giving me a real job?" "You're sober, you're coherent, and you're a Thornton. Yes, I'm giving you a job. Don't screw it up." "I won't," Marcus said quietly. The meeting continued for another hour, hammering out details, assigning responsibilities. Elena found herself in the thick of it, contributing ideas, challenging assumptions, earning grudging nods from the veterans. When it finally adjourned, Elena felt exhausted but exhilarated. She had done it. She had participated in her first board meeting and not just survived, but contributed something meaningful. James caught up with her in the hallway. "That was impressive, the strategic alternatives idea. Where did that come from?" "I don't know. I just looked at the problem and thought about what my mother would do. She always said the best defense is making your opponent react to you instead of the other way around." "Your mother was smart," James said. "She was," Elena agreed, feeling the fresh ache of loss. "She really was." They walked in silence for a moment. Then James said, "Listen, I know we got off to a weird start, the whole secret brother thing, But I meant what I said. We're family now. And if you need anything, advice, support, someone to vent to about how insane this all is, I'm here." Elena looked at him, this stranger who was her brother, and felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you," she said. "That means a lot." "Also," James added with a slight smile, "I'm glad you're here. Victoria needs someone who can challenge her, and I need someone who's not intimidated by her. You're good for this family, Elena, even if they don't all see it yet."
That night, Elena returned to the small apartment she had shared with her mother. It was too quiet, too empty. Maria's chair by the window sat vacant. Her coffee mug was still in the sink, exactly where Elena had left it the morning she died, unable to bring herself to wash it. Elena sat in her mother's chair and looked out at the city lights. She thought about everything that had happened in the last month. Meeting Richard, discovering James, losing her mother, joining a family that didn't want her, fighting corporate battles she barely understood. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. It was exactly what Maria would have wanted. Elena pulled out her phone and opened the email from the real estate agent. 3 properties, all sent by Victoria's assistant. Upscale apartments in Lincoln Park, Gold Coast, River North, places suitable for a Thornton. She deleted the email. She wasn't ready to leave this apartment. Not yet. This was where she had grown up, where her mother had raised her, where Maria had taught her that money doesn't make you rich, character does. Leaving felt like betrayal, but staying felt like stagnation. Elena made a decision. She would keep the apartment. She would keep it exactly as it was, a shrine to her mother, a reminder of where she came from. But she would also get a second place, something small and practical near Thornton Tower. Not because she was trying to be a Thornton, but because she had work to do, and she couldn't do it while commuting 2 hours each day. She was learning to be both things, Rodriguez and Thornton, her mother's daughter and her father's heir. It wasn't easy, but then again, nothing worth doing ever was. The announcement dropped like a bomb the next morning. Thornton Industries exploring strategic alternatives, management buyout under consideration. The stock price immediately dropped 15%. The financial press went into overdrive. CNBC had a panel discussing it by 9 a.m. Bloomberg ran a feature on the Thornton family drama. The Wall Street Journal published an editorial questioning whether the company was being driven by sound business strategy or family dysfunction. And Daniel Chandler, CEO of Chandler Industries, made an emergency call to his board of directors. Elena watched it all unfold from the war room James had set up in Thornton Tower, a conference room on the 64th floor, staffed 24 hours a day by a team of analysts, lawyers, and PR specialists. They tracked stock movements, media coverage, social media sentiment, and most importantly, any moves from Chandler. "They're panicking," James said, watching the Bloomberg terminal. "Their stock is dropping too. Their investors are spooked. They weren't expecting us to go on offense." "Good," Victoria said. She was in the war room too, sleeves rolled up, running on coffee and fury. "How's our supplier situation?" "Locked in," Sandra Okoye reported from a conference call. "I've been on the phone all morning. We've offered premium contracts to every critical supplier, 5-year deals with cost of living adjustments and early payment terms. Most of them are signing, even the ones Chandler had been courting." "What about our people?" Elena asked. "Any defections?" 3 engineers gave notice this morning, 2 in R&D, 1 in quality control, all accepting offers from Chandler-affiliated firms. "Counteroffer them," Victoria said immediately. "Match the salary, add retention bonuses, make it clear we're fighting for our people." "Already done," Karen said. 2 accepted, 1 still thinking about it. The day was a blur of phone calls, meetings, and crisis management. Elena found herself in the thick of it, working alongside people who days ago viewed her as an interloper, but now seemed to accept her part of the team.
At 6 p.m., Margaret appeared in the doorway of the war room. Her face was pale, drawn. "Victoria, Elena, James," she said quietly, "you need to come. It's Richard." They found him in his study at the manor, in his wheelchair by the window. He looked worse than ever, his skin almost translucent, his breathing labored, but his eyes were alert. "I heard about the announcement," he said, his voice a rasp. "Bold move." "It was Elena's idea," Victoria said. Richard looked at his youngest daughter. "Of course it was. You have your mother's courage." He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. "I don't have much time. Days, maybe." The doctor was very clear. "Richard," Margaret began. "No, let me speak," Richard interrupted. "I've been a coward my whole life, lying, hiding, protecting my reputation instead of protecting the people I loved. But I'm done with that. Before I die, I need to tell you the truth, all of it, the whole truth." Victoria, Elena, and James exchanged glances. Marcus appeared in the doorway, having been summoned by Margaret. "What truth?" Victoria warily asked. "What else could there possibly be?" Richard took a shuddering breath. "I need to tell you about your mother, about Catherine." Victoria went rigid. "My mother is dead. What does she have to do with this?" "Everything," Richard said. "She has everything to do with this, because I've lied about her too, and you deserve to know." He gestured to the chairs. "Sit, please. This is going to take some time." They sat, the four siblings together for the first time, united by confusion and dread. Richard stared out the window at the lake, gathering his strength and his courage. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, remembering.
"Catherine Ashford was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen," he began. "When I met her, I was 30 years old, already running this company, already suffocating under the weight of expectation. My father had died the year before, and I was drowning. Catherine was elegant, sophisticated, from an old Connecticut family. She was exactly what a Thornton CEO should marry." "We know this," Victoria said impatiently. "We know the story. You met at a charity gala, you fell in love, you got married." "We didn't fall in love," Richard said quietly. "That's the lie. We never loved each other, not even at the beginning." Silence. "What?" Victoria whispered. "It was an arrangement," Richard continued. "Her family was old money, old name, but they were broke. My family had new money, no respect. It was a transaction. She married me for financial security. I married her for social legitimacy. We were honest about it with each other, at least. We knew what we were doing." "You're saying your marriage was fake?" Marcus asked. "Not fake, just pragmatic. We were partners, not lovers. We had an agreement. She would be the perfect society wife, I would provide the perfect society life, and we would stay out of each other's way otherwise." "What does that mean?" Elena asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew. "It means we had an open marriage," Richard said. "Not publicly, of course, but privately. She saw other men, I saw other women. We both knew. We both agreed. As long as we were discreet, as long as we maintained appearances, it was fine." Victoria looked like she might be sick. "You're telling me my mother had affairs?" "Yes," Richard said. "Many of them. She was discreet, careful, but yes. And I did too. Before Maria, there were others. After Maria, there were others. Catherine and I, we weren't a real marriage. We were a business arrangement that produced 2 children." "So we were what?" Marcus said, his voice shaking. "Just part of the deal? Just props in your fake marriage?" "No," Richard said desperately. "You were real. You were the only real things in that whole artificial construction. I loved you both. So did Catherine, in her way. But she wasn't built for motherhood. She was built for social climbing. And when you were born, Victoria, she had postpartum depression, severe. She never bonded with you.
She tried, but she couldn't. Victoria was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I always thought she didn't love me because I wasn't good enough. No, Richard said, his own voice breaking. She didn't love you because she wasn't capable of it, not because of anything you did or didn't do. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I let you believe it was your fault. What happened to her? Elena asked, quietly. You said she died when Victoria and Marcus were young. Richard closed his eyes. She killed herself. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. What? Victoria choked out. No, you said it was an accident, a car accident. You said, I lied. To protect you, to protect her reputation, to protect the family name. She took pills, sleeping pills and pain medication. She left a note. It said she was tired, that she couldn't pretend anymore, that she wanted peace. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He walked to the window, his back to all of them, his shoulders shaking. Why are you telling us this now? Victoria demanded, her voice ragged. Why now, after all these years? Because you need to understand, Richard said. You need to understand why I made the choices I made, why I stayed in a loveless marriage, why I let Maria go, why I hid my children. It was all about protecting the image, the perfect Thornton family, the perfect Thornton legacy, and it was all a lie, every bit of it. He looked at each of them in turn. I watched Catherine destroy herself trying to be something she wasn't. I watched her drink herself into oblivion at parties, smile for cameras, play the perfect wife, all while dying inside. And when she finally couldn't take it anymore, when she ended her life, I covered it up. I lied to my children. I lied to the world, because I was more afraid of scandal than I was committed to truth. And that's why you let Maria go, Elena said, understanding dawning. Because you were afraid the same thing would happen, that the scandal would destroy everything. Yes, Richard admitted. I was a coward. I told myself I was protecting my children. Victoria and Marcus, they were so young, they had just lost their mother. I told myself I couldn't disrupt their lives further. But the truth is, I was protecting myself, my reputation, my comfortable lies. He looked at Elena with such profound regret that she almost looked away. And in so doing, I abandoned you. I abandoned the woman I actually loved. Maria was real, Elena. She was the only real thing in my entire adult life, and I threw her away because I was afraid. Did you ever try to go back? After Mother refused your money? Did you ever try to fix it? Once, Richard said quietly. 10 years after you were born, I tracked her down. She was working as an engineer at a small firm. She was raising you alone. I saw you from a distance. You were 10 years old, and you looked just like her. I wanted to approach, to introduce myself, to beg for forgiveness. But then I saw how happy you both seemed, how complete. And I realized I would only destroy that. I would only bring scandal and pain into your lives. So I left, and I never tried again. That's not love, Elena said, her voice hard. That's cowardice, dressed up as sacrifice. You're right, Richard agreed. It is. I've been a coward my entire life, Elena. But I want you to know something. Every year on your birthday, I sent money to a trust that will be yours regardless of the will. $5 million deposited every year for 28 years, $140 million, completely separate from the inheritance. I couldn't be your father, but I wanted to make sure you were provided for. Elena stared at him, stunned. I didn't know about that.
Your mother didn't either, Richard said. It was set up through intermediaries. It's yours. It always has been. And I know it doesn't make up for my absence. I know money can't replace a father. But it's all I knew how to give. James, who had been silent through all of this, finally spoke. What about my mother? What about Margaret? You've told us about Catherine and Maria. What about her?" Richard looked at Margaret, who stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Margaret is the person I should have married," Richard said simply. "If I had been brave, if I had been honest, if I had been capable of real love instead of business arrangements and secret affairs. Margaret understood me. She knew all my secrets and stayed anyway. She raised our son alone, with grace and dignity, never asking for more than I could give. She's been my partner for 35 years, in everything but name." "Why didn't you marry her?" James asked. "After Catherine died, why didn't you make it official?" "Because I was still hiding," Richard said. "Because I couldn't admit that I had a son with my assistant. Because people would have counted backwards, realized you were born while Catherine was still alive, realized the marriage was a sham. I chose reputation over happiness, again." Margaret walked into the room. She stood behind Richard's wheelchair, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I never asked him to marry me," she said quietly. "I knew who he was when we were together. I made my choice, and I raised our son to be strong, honest, better than either of us. James, I'm not sorry. I never have been." James looked at his mother, at Richard, at his siblings. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry I was born from a lie." "You weren't born from a lie," Elena said suddenly, surprising herself. She stood and walked to James. "You were born from two people who found comfort in each other during a dark time. That's not a lie. That's human." She looked at Richard. "I'm angry with you. I'll probably always be angry with you. You made terrible choices. You hurt people I love. But I'm not going to let your mistakes define my life or James's life or anyone else's. We're more than your secrets." Victoria had been silent, processing everything. Now she stood, wiping her eyes. "I hated her," she said quietly. "My mother. I hated her for being cold, for not loving me. And now you're telling me she was sick, that she couldn't help it, that she was trapped in a life she didn't want?" "I'm sorry," Richard said. "I should have told you years ago." "Yes, you should have," Victoria agreed. Her voice was sharp, angry, but there was something else there, too. Understanding, maybe, or at least the beginning of it. "But you didn't, because you're a coward, like you said, and now we all have to live with the consequences of your cowardice." She looked at Elena and James. "But she's right. We're more than his mistakes. We're our own people, and we have a company to save." Marcus turned from the window. His face was wet with tears, but his voice was steady. "I've spent my entire life drinking because I thought I was the family failure, because I thought I disappointed everyone. But Mom was sick, and Dad was lying, and the whole thing was built on quicksand. I'm not the failure. The family was the failure." "Yes," Richard said, "it was, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it." "Sorry doesn't fix it," Marcus said, "but maybe we can. Maybe we can build something real this time, something honest." The four siblings looked at each other. Victoria, the perfectionist, who had been trying to earn love that was never available. Marcus, the scapegoat, who had been punishing himself for sins that weren't his. James, the secret son who had been hiding in plain sight. And Elena, the abandoned daughter who had been searching for a family that didn't want her. They were damaged, all of them, broken by lies and secrets and impossible expectations. But they were still standing, and that had to count for something. "We should get back to the tower," Victoria said finally, ever practical. "Chandler isn't going to wait for us to work through our family therapy." "I'll come with you," Marcus said. "I'm on family outreach, remember? I have calls to make." Elena nodded. "I'm coming too." James looked at Richard, then at Margaret. "I'll be along," he said. "I need a minute." The others filed out, leaving James alone with his parents. When they were gone, James walked to the window, looking out at the same lake view his father had been staring at for decades.
I forgive you, both of you. I don't know if I should, but I do. James, Richard began. Let me finish, James said. I forgive you because holding on to anger is exhausting, because Elena's right, we're more than his mistakes. But I want you to know something, Dad. When I have kids, I'm going to tell them the truth about everything, about you, about Mom, about how messy and complicated and imperfect families are, because I think that's what we owe the next generation, honesty. You're a better man than I ever was, Richard said. I know, James said simply. Then he walked out, leaving Richard and Margaret alone. Margaret came around the wheelchair and knelt in front of Richard. She took his hands in hers, these two old warriors who had been fighting their private battle for 35 years. They're going to be okay, she said. I hope so, Richard whispered. God, I hope so. They will, Margaret said with certainty, because they have each other now, because they know the truth, because they're stronger than we ever were. Richard closed his eyes, tears leaking from beneath his lids. I wasted it all, Margaret, my whole life, chasing reputation instead of happiness, protecting lies instead of building truth. Maybe, Margaret said, but you're fixing it now. In the time you have left, you're fixing it. That's something. It's not enough, Richard said. It never is, Margaret agreed, but it's what we have. They sat together in the fading light, these two people who loved each other in secret for more than 30 decades, and waited for the end.
Daniel Chandler was not a patient man. At 42, he had inherited his father's company and his father's grudges. Chief among them was Richard Thornton, the man who had blocked his father's acquisition attempt 14 years ago, humiliating the Chandler family in front of the entire industry. Robert Chandler, Daniel's father, had died 3 years ago without ever getting his revenge. Daniel had made it his life's mission to finish what his father started, destroy Thornton Industries and salt the earth where it once stood. The announcement about strategic alternatives had caught him off guard. He had been planning his move for Q1 of the following year, after Richard died, after the estate fell into chaos. But Thornton had surprised him. They had moved first. Now he was scrambling. We need to accelerate, Daniel said, standing in his corner office overlooking Chicago's financial district. His team, lawyers, investment bankers, corporate raiders, sat around his conference table, looking nervous. The financing isn't fully arranged, his CFO, Patricia Monroe, said carefully. We need another 3 months to— We don't have 3 months, Daniel interrupted. They've announced they're going private. If they complete that transaction, we lose our window. We move now or we lose everything. What are you proposing? His lead attorney asked. Hostile bid, Daniel said. Tomorrow, we announce a tender offer for all outstanding Thornton shares at a 30% premium to current market price. We go directly to the shareholders, bypass the board entirely. That's going to cost, Patricia began calculating on her tablet. $4 billion, Daniel said. I know, it's at the top of our budget, but it's doable. We have commitments from Goldman, from JP Morgan. We can close the financing in 48 hours. What about the family? Another advisor asked. They control 60% of the shares between them. Victoria has 40%, Elena has 25%. 25%, Daniel thought thoughtfully. The bastard daughter, the one who just found out she's a Thornton a month ago. That's our weak link. What do you mean? Think about it, Daniel said, warming to his idea. Elena Rodriguez Thornton doesn't know these people. She has no loyalty to them. She was abandoned by Richard, rejected by the family. She's only there because of the will. What if we approach her directly? What if we offer her a deal? What kind of deal? Patricia asked, intrigued. We offer to buy her shares at a premium, 40% above market price. That's about $200 million more than she'd get otherwise. Plus, we guarantee her a seat on our board,
protection for the workers at her plant, funding for her mother's scholarship. We give her everything she supposedly cares about, plus a massive payout. Why would she sell to us instead of participating in the management buyout? Because the management buyout is risky. It requires her to invest her own capital, take on debt, tie herself to a family that doesn't want her. Our offer is clean, simple, immediate. Cash out, walk away, be free of all the drama. What rational person wouldn't take that deal? His team exchanged glances. It was ruthless. It was also smart. If we get Elena's 25% plus the 20% of public shares we think we can acquire in the tender offer, that's 45%, close enough to force a negotiation. Victoria would have to deal with us, and Victoria, from everything I know about her, would rather sell the whole company than let us have a piece of it. She's too proud to share power. It could work, Patricia admitted. It will work, Daniel said with confidence. Get me Elena Rodriguez's contact information. I'm going to make her an offer she can't refuse. Elena was in the war room when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost ignored it. She'd been ignoring media calls all day, but something made her answer. Elena Rodriguez Thornton, she said. Ms. Rodriguez Thornton, this is Daniel Chandler, CEO of Chandler Industries. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Elena went very still. She looked around the war room, but everyone was occupied with their own work. She stepped out into the hallway. Mr. Chandler, she said carefully, this is unexpected. I imagine it is, Daniel said smoothly. I'll cut right to the point. I know you're in the middle of planning a management buyout. I know your family is trying to take Thornton private to block my acquisition. I respect the strategy. It's smart. But I want to offer you an alternative. I'm listening, Elena said, though every instinct was screaming that this was dangerous. I want to buy your shares, Daniel said, all 25%. I'll pay you 40% above current market value. That's approximately $280 million, cash, closing within 30 days. No strings, no conditions. You walk away wealthy and free. Elena's breath caught. $280 million. It was an incomprehensible sum, more than her mother's trust, more than the inheritance, life-changing wealth. Why would you offer that? She asked. Because your shares are worth it to me, and because I think you're smart enough to see that you're in an impossible position. Your family doesn't really want you there. They're tolerating you because they need your shares. But do you really want to spend the next decade fighting battles with people who resent your existence?
You don't know anything about my family, Elena said, though his words stung because they weren't entirely wrong. I know they spent 30 years pretending you didn't exist, Daniel said. I know Victoria treats you like a threat. I know Marcus is a drunk who just got out of rehab. I know James is playing his own game. These aren't your people, Miss Rodriguez. You don't owe them anything. Your father abandoned you, Daniel interrupted gently. He's dying now, trying to buy forgiveness with money and stock, but that doesn't make you obligated to sacrifice your future for his company. Elena was quiet, her mind racing. Everything he was saying was logical. Everything he was saying made sense. And yet, what happens to the workers, she asked. If you acquire Thornton, what happens to the people on the factory floor? I'm not going to lie to you, Daniel said, and Elena appreciated that. There will be consolidation, some redundancies, but I promise you I'll retain at least 70% of the workforce, and I'll invest in modernization, new equipment, new safety protocols, everything you've been advocating for in your board meetings. You know about my board meetings? I have sources, Daniel said. I know you've been pushing for change. I know you care about the workers. I respect that, and I'll make you a deal. You sell me your shares, I put you on my board, and you personally oversee the integration of the plants. You ensure the workers are treated fairly. You make sure the promises are kept. It was a good offer, a brilliant offer, actually. Everything she had said she wanted. Money, power, protection for workers, handed to her on a silver platter. I need to think about it, Elena said. Of course, Daniel said. I'll send you a formal offer by email tonight. You have 48 hours to consider. After that, I'm launching a tender offer for all outstanding shares, and the price war begins. I'd rather have your cooperation, Elena, but I'll win either way." He hung up. Elena stood in the hallway, her phone still pressed to her ear, her heart pounding. She should tell Victoria. She should tell James. She should walk back into that war room and announce that Chandler had just tried to buy her out. But she didn't. Instead, she went to the bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and tried to breathe. $280 million. Security for life. Freedom from a family that had never wanted her. A chance to walk away from all of this chaos and build her own life on her own terms. It was everything she should want. So why did it feel like betrayal? Elena didn't tell anyone about Chandler's call that night. She went back to the war room, participated in the strategy sessions, made small talk with her siblings. She smiled and nodded and pretended everything was normal. But it wasn't normal. She was carrying a secret that could destroy everything they were building. At 11 p.m., Victoria called an end to the session. "We're all exhausted. Go home, get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be brutal." Elena gathered her things. As she was leaving, James caught up with her in the parking garage. "Hey," he said, "you okay? You seem distracted." "I'm fine," Elena lied. "Just tired." "Elena," James said gently, "I know we haven't known each other long, but I'm your brother, and I can tell when something's wrong. What is it?" Elena looked at him, this man who had kept his own secrets for 6 years, who understood what it meant to be caught between loyalty and self-interest. "If someone offered you a way out, a way to escape all of this, with enough money to never worry again, would you take it?" James studied her face. "Chandler called you, didn't he?" Elena's silence was confirmation enough. "What did he offer?" "A lot," Elena admitted. "More than I'd get from the buyout, more than I'd get from anything except holding the shares forever. And you're considering it." "Shouldn't I?" Elena challenged. "Why should I sacrifice my financial future for a family that spent 30 decades denying I existed? Why should I take on debt and risk for people who barely tolerate me?" "Because it's not about them," James said quietly. "It's about you. It's about who you want to be." "That's easy for you to say," Elena shot back. "You've been part of this company for 10 years. You have history here. You have relationships. I've been here for a month. I don't owe these people anything." "You're right, you don't. But if you sell to Chandler, you'll always wonder. You'll always ask yourself if you could have made a difference, if you could have honored your mother's memory by building something meaningful instead of just cashing out." "My mother told me to take the money," Elena said. "She told me to take every penny." "She also told you to build empires," James countered. "Empires aren't built by selling out at the first difficult moment. They're built by people who stand and fight when it would be easier to run." Elena felt tears prickling at her eyes. "I don't know if I'm that person."
"Yes, you do," James said. "You've known exactly what kind of person you are since you walked into that library and demanded respect, since you stood up to Victoria and Charles and everyone else who underestimated you. You're Maria Rodriguez's daughter, and Maria Rodriguez didn't raise a quitter." Elena wiped her eyes roughly. "He's offering $280 million, James." "I know," James said, "and it's tempting. But will you be able to look at yourself in the mirror? Will you be able to visit your mother's grave and tell her you sold out?" "That's not fair," Elena whispered. "Life isn't fair," James said. "But you get to choose what kind of person you are. And I think you've already made that choice. You just need to accept it." He squeezed her shoulder and walked to his car, leaving Elena alone in the fluorescent-lit garage. She sat in her truck for a long time, staring at nothing. Then she pulled out her phone and typed an email to Daniel Chandler. "Mr. Chandler, thank you for your generous offer. After careful consideration, I must decline. My shares are not for sale. Respectfully, Elena Rodriguez Thornton." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she called Victoria. "Elena?" Victoria answered, sounding surprised. "It's almost midnight. What's wrong?" "Chandler called me today. He offered to buy my shares for $280 million. I just turned him down, but I thought you should know he's trying to divide us." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Victoria said,
her voice thick with something that might have been respect or might have been relief. "Thank you for telling me, and thank you for saying no." "Don't thank me yet," Elena said. "If he offered me that much, he's desperate, which means he's going to make his move soon. We need to be ready." "We will be," Victoria said. "Elena, I'm glad you're here. I know I haven't said that before, but I am." "Yeah, me too." She hung up and sat in her truck a moment longer, feeling the weight of her decision. She had just turned down more money than most people saw in 10 lifetimes. She had chosen family over fortune, loyalty over logic, principle over pragmatism. She had chosen to be her mother's daughter. Daniel Chandler received Elena's rejection at 11:47 p.m. He read it once, then threw his phone across his office. It shattered against the wall. "Damn it," he shouted to the empty room. He had been so sure she would take the deal, so certain that she would see reason, but she had turned him down, and in doing so, she had cost him his easiest path to victory. Fine. If she wanted to play it that way, they would play it that way. He picked up his office phone and called Patricia Monroe. "Launch the tender offer," he said. "Tomorrow morning, full hostile bid. And get me a list of every institutional investor holding Thornton shares. We're going to war." The tender offer went public at 6 a.m. Eastern Time before the markets opened. Chandler Industries launches $4.2 billion hostile bid for Thornton Industries. The business world exploded. It was the most aggressive hostile takeover attempt in years, a direct assault on one of Chicago's oldest industrial dynasties. The media coverage was instant and overwhelming. By 7 a.m., Elena, Victoria, James, and Marcus were back in the war room with their full team of advisors. The air was electric with tension and caffeine. "He's offering $65 per share. That's a 40% premium over yesterday's close. The institutional investors are going to be very tempted." "How much of the public float do we think he can acquire?" their lead banker, Mitchell Ross from Goldman Sachs, said. "If everyone sells, he could get up to 25%. Combined with shares he's been quietly accumulating over the past year, that puts him at about 30%. Not enough for control, but enough to be a massive problem." "Can we block the tender offer?" Marcus asked. "Not legally," Thomas Wright, the general counsel, said. "It's a legitimate offer to public shareholders. We can try to convince them not to sell, but we can't stop them from making their own decisions." "What about the poison pill?" Elena asked. She had been reading everything she could about hostile takeovers for the past week. "Already in place," Thomas confirmed. "If Chandler acquires more than 20%, we can dilute his stake by issuing new shares to other shareholders. But that's a nuclear option. It tanks the stock price and creates massive shareholder lawsuits." "So we're in a Mexican stalemate. He can't get control, but we can't get rid of him. And the fight itself is destroying the company's value."
"Unless we complete the management buyout first," James said. "If we can get the financing arranged and close the deal before Chandler accumulates enough shares, we take the company private and end the battle." "How fast can we move?" Victoria asked Mitchell. 3 weeks minimum, Mitchell said. "That's rushing it. We need board approval, shareholder approval, regulatory filings." "We don't have 3 weeks," Victoria interrupted. "Chandler is moving now. We need to match his timeline." "That's legally impossible," Thomas said. "There are mandatory waiting periods, disclosure requirements." "Then we need a different strategy," Elena said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. "We need to make ourselves radioactive. We need to make Chandler not want to acquire us, even if he can." "What do you mean?" Victoria asked. "Scorched earth," Elena said, an idea forming as she spoke. "We sell off the most valuable assets, the real estate portfolio, the patent library. We distribute them to shareholders as special dividends. We hollow out the company so there's nothing left worth buying." "That's insane," David Park said. "You'd be destroying decades of value." "I'd be saving the company,"
Elena countered. Chandler doesn't want Thornton Industries because he loves manufacturing. He wants it because of the valuable assets we own, the properties, the patents, the contracts. If we strip those away, if we make the acquisition pointless, he'll back off. She's right, Victoria said slowly, her eyes lighting up with understanding. It's corporate suicide, but it's also brilliant. We sell the assets to friendly buyers, investors who will lease them back to us, or partners who will license the patents. We get cash, shareholders get dividends, and Chandler gets an empty shell. The board will never approve it, Mitchell warned. The hell they won't, Victoria said. Call an emergency meeting, today. We're going to present this plan and we're going to ram it through before Chandler knows what hit him. The emergency board meeting convened at 2 p.m. Every member was present, most of them looking shell-shocked by the rapid developments. Victoria stood at the head of the table, Elena beside her, presenting a united front. Chandler has launched a hostile bid, Victoria said without preamble. He's betting that he can accumulate enough shares to force us to negotiate. We're not going to let that happen. Elena has proposed a defense strategy that I'm endorsing. We're going to execute a self-tender. She clicked to a presentation slide that showed the plan in stark detail. We're selling 3 major assets: the Chicago lakefront property portfolio, worth approximately $500 million, the advanced materials patent library, worth approximately $300 million, and our 40% stake in Thornton Aerospace, worth approximately $600 million. Total, $1.4 billion. Gasps around the table. We'll distribute this as a special dividend to shareholders, roughly $18 per share. This accomplishes 3 things. 1, it rewards our loyal shareholders and makes them less likely to sell to Chandler. 2, it depletes our cash reserves, so there's less for Chandler to acquire. 3, it removes the most attractive assets from the company, making us less appealing target. This is madness, Robert Chennault said, his face red. You'd be destroying decades of—
Robert Chennault said, his face red. You're cannibalizing the company. I'm saving it, Victoria said coldly. Would you rather see it intact in Chandler's hands or stripped down but still ours? The patent library is our future, Sandra Okoye objected. Without it, we can't develop new products. We're licensing it back, Elena explained, stepping forward. We're selling it to a private equity firm that's agreed to lease the patents back to us at favorable rates. We maintain access, they maintain ownership. It's a structured deal, not a liquidation. And the real estate? David Park asked. Sale-leaseback, Victoria said. We're selling the properties to a REIT. They're immediately leasing them back to us. We get cash, they get steady rental income, we maintain our physical presence. What about Thornton Aerospace? Karen Delacroix asked. Our minority stake isn't strategic, James said. It's a legacy investment from 30 years ago. It's valuable, but it doesn't impact our core operations. We're selling it to Boeing, who's been trying to acquire it for years. They'll pay full value and close in 2 weeks. The board members looked at each other, processing the audacity of the plan. How long do we have to execute this? Thomas Wright asked. 10 days, Victoria said. Everything needs to close within 10 days or Chandler will have time to block it through legal challenges. That's impossible, Mitchell Ross said. Make it possible, Victoria said, because this is happening. We're voting today. All in favor. Elena held her breath. This was it. This was the moment where the board either backed them or sided with caution and convention. Hands started going up. James, Marcus, Sandra, Karen. Then, surprisingly, Robert Chennault raised his hand. You're reckless, he said to Victoria, but you're right. Better our recklessness than Chandler's acquisition. I'm in. The vote passed 7-2. Victoria allowed herself a small, fierce smile. Then let's get to work.
The next 10 days were the most intense of Elena's life. She barely slept, operating on adrenaline and coffee, coordinating with lawyers and bankers and accountants. The war room became her second home, the screens showing real-time updates on every transaction, every filing, every movement in the corporate chess game. Chandler tried to block them. He filed injunctions, accused them of breaching fiduciary duty,
claimed the self-tender was a desperate attempt to entrench management at the expense of shareholders. But Victoria and her team had been thorough. Every transaction was legally bulletproof, every defense anticipated and countered. On day 7, the patent sale to the private equity firm closed. $300 million flowed into Thornton's accounts. On day 8, the real estate sale-leaseback completed. $500 million more. On day 9, Boeing acquired the Thornton Aerospace stake, $600 million. $1.4 billion in special dividends distributed to shareholders on day 10. The stock price spiked. Shareholders who had been tempted by Chandler's tender offer suddenly had cash in hand and decided to hold their remaining shares. Chandler's tender offer, which had been tracking toward 20% acquisition, stalled at 12%. It wasn't enough. On day 11, Chandler withdrew his tender offer. The press release was terse and bitter. Chandler Industries is withdrawing its acquisition offer for Thornton Industries. The recent asset disposals by Thornton management have materially altered the value proposition. We believe Thornton's management has acted recklessly and to the detriment of long-term shareholder value. However, we recognize that further pursuit of this acquisition is not in our shareholders' best interests. When Elena read the announcement, she was standing in the war room with Victoria, James, and Marcus. They had been awake for 36 hours straight, running on fumes and stubbornness. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus started laughing, a real, genuine, joyful laugh. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it. We beat him." "We did," Victoria said, and she was smiling, a rare, unguarded smile. She looked at Elena. "You did it. This was your idea." "It was our idea," Elena corrected. "All of us." Victoria held out her hand. Elena shook it, and this time the handshake lingered, warm and genuine. "Welcome to the family," Victoria said quietly. "Really welcome this time." James put his arms around both of them, and Marcus joined in, and for just a moment they stood in a circle, these 4 siblings who had been strangers a month ago, who had been forged into something real by crisis and choice. They were a family, damaged, complicated, imperfect, but real.
Richard Thornton died 3 days later, peacefully in his sleep, with Margaret holding his hand. The funeral was a spectacle. Chicago's elite turned out in force, filling the cathedral, offering condolences that ranged from genuine to performative. The press swarmed outside, cameras flashing, trying to get shots of the legendary Thornton family. Elena stood with her siblings at the front of the church, wearing a black dress she had bought the day before. She felt numb, disconnected. This man in the casket was her father, but he was also a stranger. She had known him for weeks, not years. She mourned not the man he was, but the father he could have been. Victoria gave the eulogy. She spoke about Richard's accomplishments, his vision, his impact on the city and the industry. She spoke about his failures, too, with a brutal honesty that made some mourners uncomfortable. "My father was not a perfect man," Victoria said, her voice clear and strong. "He made mistakes. He hurt people. He prioritized reputation over relationships. But in his final weeks, he did something brave. He told the truth. He acknowledged the children he had hidden. He tried, in his imperfect way, to make amends. That's not enough to erase the pain he caused, but it's something, and I choose to remember that he tried." After the funeral, they gathered at Thornton Manor for the reception. Hundreds of people milled through the house, offering condolences, networking, evaluating the new leadership. Elena escaped to the library, seeking a moment of quiet. She stood by the window where Richard had sat in his wheelchair, looking out at the lake. "He loved this view," Margaret said, appearing beside her. "He used to say it reminded him that the world was bigger than boardrooms and balance sheets." "Did he ever tell you about my mother? Really tell you? What she meant to him?"
Once, Margaret said, near the end. He said Maria was the person he should have been brave enough to choose, that if he had been the man he pretended to be, he would have left Catherine, married Maria, built a life based on love instead of contracts. But he wasn't that man, Elena said. No, she agreed, he wasn't. But you are that person, Elena. You're brave enough to choose truth over convenience. That's why he was so proud of you in those last weeks. You're everything he wished he had been. Elena felt tears prickling. I barely knew him. You knew enough, Margaret said gently. You knew him better in a month than most people knew him in decades, because you saw the real him, not the version he performed for the world. She pulled an envelope from her purse. He asked me to give you this. He wrote it the day before he died. Elena took the envelope with shaking hands. It was heavy, quality paper, her name written in Richard's shaky handwriting. Read it later, Margaret suggested, when you're ready.
That night, after the reception ended, after the last mourners left, the 4 siblings gathered in the library one final time. Thomas Wright, the general counsel, was there too, carrying Richard's actual will, not the one that had been read weeks ago, but a final codicil that Richard had added in his last days. There's one more distribution, Thomas said. Richard created individual trusts for each of you, funded separately from the estate. They each contained $10 million and a personal letter. He handed out 4 sealed envelopes, one to each sibling. Victoria opened hers first. Inside was a letter, handwritten, and a key. Victoria, she read aloud, you are the strongest person I know. You built yourself into someone extraordinary, despite having me as a father, not because of it. I'm sorry I made you fight so hard for recognition. You had it all along. The key is to your mother's studio. I've kept it exactly as she left it. I thought you might want to see the paintings she did before she got sick. She was talented. You have her eye for beauty. Use it. Love, Dad. Victoria's hands were shaking. She had never known her mother painted. She looked at the key, at this unexpected window into a woman she had never understood, and started crying. Marcus opened his next. He read it silently, then looked up with wet eyes. He says he's sorry for making me feel worthless. He says my problem was never that I wasn't good enough. It was that I was too much like him, sensitive and scared of being seen as weak. He says the trust is for me to do whatever I want with my life, start a foundation, travel, find joy. Just don't waste it on trying to become someone I'm not. Marcus's voice broke. He says he loves me. He actually wrote it. I love you, Marcus. James opened his and read silently for a long moment. Then he smiled, a sad, bittersweet smile. He says he's proud of me, that I'm the leader he tried to be but never was, that I have integrity he only learned to value too late. And he says, James paused, his voice thick. He says, thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for being my son. I didn't deserve you, but I'm grateful I had you. Finally, Elena opened hers. The letter was longer than the others, several pages in Richard's deteriorating handwriting. Elena, she read, her voice barely audible. You are reading this, which means I'm gone. I hope that means I found peace. More importantly, I hope you find peace too. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know abandoning you and your mother is unforgivable. But I want you to understand something. Every day for 28 years I thought about you. Every birthday I imagined what you looked like, what you were doing, who you were becoming. I was a coward who let you go, but I never stopped being your father in my heart. I know that's not enough. I know love without action is meaningless, but I want you to know it existed. Your mother was extraordinary. She taught me more in 6 months than I learned in decades of business school and boardrooms.
She taught me that dignity doesn't come from wealth or status. It comes from how you treat people when you have nothing to gain from them. She had that, and so do you. The trust is yours to use however you want, but I have one request, not a condition, just a hope. Use some of it to build that engineering firm you've always dreamed of, the one your mother wanted to start but never could. Build it. Make it a place where talented people from any background can thrive. Make it the company Thornton Industries should have been. Make it Maria's legacy. And Elena, one more thing. Your siblings need you. They're broken, like I was, but they're trying. Victoria is learning to be vulnerable. Marcus is learning to be sober. James is learning to be seen. They need someone who isn't afraid of truth, who wasn't raised in lies. They need you. Be patient with them. Be patient with yourself. And know that even though I failed you in life, I'm proud of you. So proud. Love, your father, Richard.
So, now that both parents are gone and the siblings are finally coming together, comment below. Do you think they can truly become a family after all these lies? What if there are more secrets? If you're invested in seeing how this ends, like this video and subscribe. The final twist is about to change everything. Elena finished reading and carefully folded the letter. She looked at her siblings, at these three people who were becoming family in the truest sense. He was a terrible father, she said quietly. But he was trying at the end. That has to count for something. Yeah, Victoria agreed, wiping her eyes. It does. They sat together in the library, in the house where so many secrets had been kept, where so many lies had been told. But tonight there were no more secrets. There were just four people, connected by blood and choice, by pain and hope, beginning to build something real. 1 year later, Elena stood on the factory floor of Rodriguez Engineering, watching as her team assembled the prototype for their first major contract. The facility was a converted warehouse on Chicago's west side, modernized with state-of-the-art equipment, designed with every safety feature Elena had ever dreamed of implementing. Above the main work floor, a plaque read, Rodriguez Engineering, founded in memory of Maria Rodriguez, who taught us that broken things can be made more beautiful. The company had 20 employees so far, most of them recruited from Thornton Industries' South Side plant. Elena had poached the best and brightest, offering them equity, respect, and the chance to build something new. Thornton Industries was doing well too. Victoria had restructured it aggressively after going private, modernizing operations, investing in people, slowly transforming it from a legacy dinosaur into something leaner and more innovative. Marcus was running their corporate foundation, sober for 14 months, doing some of the best work of his life. James was COO, executing Victoria's vision with precision and care. And Elena served on Thornton's board while building her own company, bridging both worlds, honoring both families. Her phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Board meeting tomorrow. Try not to be late this time. Elena smiled. Their relationship was still complicated, still prickly, but it was real. They fought, they disagreed, they challenged each other, but they also showed up for each other, supported each other, slowly becoming actual sisters. Another text, this one from James. Lunch this weekend? I want to hear about the new contract. And Marcus, Mom's memorial is next week. You're coming, right? Victoria's doing the reading this time. Elena typed back to all three. I'll be there. She looked up at the plaque, at her mother's name in brass letters, and felt a complicated mix of grief and pride and hope. Maria Rodriguez had taught her daughter that broken things could be beautiful, that love without action was meaningless, that reputation without character was empty. Richard Thornton had taught her something too, though not through words. He had taught her through his failures what kind of person she didn't want to be, And through his final attempts at redemption, he had taught her that it's never too late to try, even if trying doesn't erase the past. Elena was both their daughter, Rodriguez and Thornton, mechanical engineer and board member, self-made and inherited, working-class roots and billionaire resources. She was learning to be both, learning to honor both legacies, learning that identity wasn't either or, but and. The factory floor supervisor called out to her, asking about a specification. Elena walked over, falling into easy conversation about tolerances and materials, in her element, doing what she loved. She had found her family. She had found her purpose. She had found herself.
And that, she thought as she picked up a wrench and helped adjust the prototype, that was the real inheritance. Not the money or the stock or the properties, but the freedom to choose who she wanted to be, the courage to build something meaningful, the wisdom to know the difference between what was given and what was earned. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from Northwestern University. The Maria Rodriguez Engineering Scholarship had just awarded its first 10 recipients, 10 young women from underrepresented communities given full rides to study engineering. Elena opened the email and read the names, 10 strangers who would never meet her mother, but who would benefit from her legacy. 10 lives changed because Maria Rodriguez had loved a billionaire and been abandoned, but had raised her daughter to believe that broken things could be made beautiful. Elena forwarded the email to Victoria, James, and Marcus with a simple note. This is what it was all for. Thank you for making it possible. Victoria's reply came immediately. Mom would be proud. See you tomorrow at the board meeting. Don't be late. James, this is amazing. Let's celebrate at dinner this weekend. Marcus, crying at my desk. Thanks for that. But seriously, this is beautiful. Elena smiled, pocketed her phone, and got back to work. That evening, she drove to Rose Hill Cemetery on the north side, where Maria Rodriguez was buried in a modest plot that Elena had since upgraded with a beautiful headstone made of polished granite. The inscription read, Maria Rodriguez, 1969-2025. Brilliant engineer, devoted mother, extraordinary woman. She taught us that love is action, not words, and that broken things can be made more beautiful. Elena sat on the grass beside the grave, like she did every week, and talked to her mother. We won, Mama, she said quietly. We beat Chandler. We saved the company. And I started Rodriguez Engineering, just like you always wanted. We have our first big contract, a manufacturing system for Boeing. Remember when you used to tell me about your dream of building systems that would fly? We're doing it. She traced the letters of her mother's name on the headstone. I miss you every day. I wish you could see what we've built. I wish you could meet Victoria and James and Marcus. They're complicated and damaged and kind of a mess, but they're family, real family, the kind you choose and fight for and build with. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of late autumn leaves. I forgave him, Mama, Richard, not because he deserved it, but because you taught me that carrying anger is like carrying stones. It only weighs you down. He was a coward and a liar, but he was also human and broken and trying at the end to be better. That's all any of us can do, right? Try to be better than we were yesterday? Elena pulled a small object from her pocket. It was the Kirimon crest, the family emblem Richard had carried with him for decades. Margaret had given it to Elena after the funeral, saying Richard had left instructions that it should go to her. He gave me this, Elena said, holding up the worn metal disc. It was his mother's, apparently, his connection to his Japanese heritage, the part of himself he hid away like he hid me. I think he wanted me to have it because I'm the only one who understands what it's like to hide who you are, to feel like part of you isn't acceptable to the world. She set the crest on the grave beside a bouquet of fresh flowers. I'm leaving this here with you, Mama, because I don't need it anymore. I'm not hiding. I'm not ashamed.
I'm Elena Rodriguez Thornton. I'm your daughter and his daughter and my own person. I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be." She sat in silence for a long moment, feeling the evening chill, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Victoria, Marcus, and James walking toward her across the cemetery grass. They were all carrying flowers. "How did you know I was here?" Elena asked, surprised. "You come every Tuesday evening," James said gently. "We thought maybe this week you shouldn't be alone." Victoria knelt beside the grave, placing her bouquet next to Elena's. "We wanted to meet her," she said quietly. "Your mother, our father's great love, the woman who raised the person who saved our family." Marcus set his flowers down too. "I wish we'd known her. From everything you've told us, she was extraordinary." "She was," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. "She really was."
They sat together, the four of them, at Maria Rodriguez's grave. Strangers a year ago, enemies almost, and now, impossibly, family. "Tell us about her," Victoria said. "Tell us a story we haven't heard." So Elena did. She told them about the time Maria had worked 3 jobs to afford Elena's first engineering kit, about the way she would stay up late helping Elena with homework even after 14-hour shifts, about her laugh, which sounded like music, about her fierce pride and her gentle wisdom and her unshakable belief that love was action, not words. And as the sun set over Chicago, as the city lights began to twinkle in the distance, the 4 Thornton siblings sat together and remembered the woman who had never wanted their money or their name or their empire, the woman who had just wanted to be loved, and who had taught her daughter to be brave enough to love in return. 2 weeks later, Elena was in her office at Rodriguez Engineering when Margaret Chen called. "Elena, I need to see you, in person, today if possible. It's about your father." There was something in Margaret's voice, urgency, nervousness that made Elena immediately agree. They met at a small cafe in Lincoln Park, far from Thornton Tower, far from anyone who might recognize them. Margaret looked older than Elena had ever seen her, tired and worried. She ordered tea but didn't drink it, just wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "There's something I didn't tell you," Margaret said without preamble. "Something Richard made me promise not to reveal until a year after his death." Elena's heart started pounding. "What is it?" Margaret pulled a manila envelope from her bag and slid it across the table. "Richard didn't just have 3 hidden children. He had 4. Elena stared at the envelope, afraid to touch it. "What?" "Before Maria, before me, when Richard was in his 20s, just starting at the company, there was someone else. A woman named Sarah Kim. She was an intern at Thornton Industries in 1982. They had a brief relationship. She got pregnant, and Richard, being Richard, paid her to disappear." "Oh my God," Elena whispered. "Sarah moved to Los Angeles. She had the baby, a boy, and raised him alone. She never contacted Richard again. She took his money and vanished. Richard didn't even know if the child survived, if Sarah kept him or gave him up for adoption. He tried to find them once, years later, but Sarah had covered her tracks too well." "Why are you telling me this now?" Margaret's hands were shaking. "Because he found us, the son. His name is David Kim. He's 42 years old. He's a technology entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, and he's been quietly buying Thornton Industries stock for the past 6 months. He now owns 8% of the company." Elena felt like she'd been punched in the chest. 8%? How is that possible? We went private. The stock isn't publicly traded. "He bought it from some of the smaller investors who participated in the management buyout, people who wanted liquidity. He's been very careful, very quiet, using shell companies, staying under the radar. But I found out because I still have contacts at the SEC. I ran the ownership reports and I saw the pattern." "What does he want?" Elena asked.
though she thought she already knew the answer. "I don't know," admitted Margaret, "but he's reached out. He wants to meet all of you, the siblings. He says it's time the family was complete." Elena thought of Victoria, Marcus, James. They had just started to heal, just started to become a real family, and now there was another sibling, another secret, another complication. "Does he know?" Elena asked. "Does David know that Richard was his father?" "Yes," Margaret said. "Sarah told him when he turned 18, just like Elena was told. And apparently he's been watching the Thornton family ever since, watching and waiting and planning. The question is, what is he planning?" Elena looked at the envelope Margaret had given her. Inside, she knew, would be documents, proof, information about this brother she'd never known existed. "We have to tell the others," Elena said. "I know," Margaret agreed, "but Elena, be careful. David Kim is not like you or James. You both wanted acknowledgement, family, connection. David has built a billion-dollar tech company on his own. He doesn't need money. He doesn't need recognition. So why is he buying Thornton stock now? Maybe he wants what we all wanted, to be seen, to be part of the family."
"Maybe," Margaret said. "Or maybe he wants revenge for being erased, for being paid off, for being the one secret Richard took to his grave." Elena thought about her father, about all his lies and secrets, about the empire built on hidden children and buried truths. She thought about the family she had found, the siblings she had learned to love despite everything. And she realized that Richard Thornton's legacy wasn't the company or the money or the properties. It was this: 5 children scattered across the country, all carrying the weight of his choices, all trying to figure out how to be family despite being raised as strangers. "When does he want to meet?" Elena asked. "Next week," Margaret said. "He suggested lunch at a restaurant downtown." V. Now another stranger, another sibling, wanted to meet there, to test them, perhaps, to judge them, to join them or destroy them. "I'll tell the others," Elena said, taking the envelope, "and we'll meet him, together, as a family." "Elena," Margaret said gently, "are you sure you want to do this? You could walk away. You've built your own company. You have enough money to never worry again. You don't owe the Thornton family anything." Elena thought about her mother, about Maria's fierce determination and unwavering courage. She thought about Richard's final letter, asking her to be patient with her siblings, to help them heal. She thought about Victoria, Marcus, and James, her complicated, difficult, beloved family. "I'm sure," Elena said, "because that's what family does. We show up, even when it's hard, even when we're scared. We show up." Margaret smiled, sad and proud. "Maria raised you well." "Yeah," Elena said softly. She did. That night, Elena called an emergency family meeting. They gathered at Thornton Manor, Victoria, Marcus, James, and Elena. The same library where this had all started a year ago. The same window overlooking the lake where Richard had confessed his sins. Elena stood in front of her siblings and told them about David Kim, about the 5th Thornton child, about the 8% stake, about the meeting request. The silence that followed was long and heavy. Then Marcus started laughing, not his bitter, broken laugh from before, but something genuine, almost admiring. "Of course," he said, "of course there's another one, because our family can't just have a normal amount of dysfunction. We have to collect secret siblings like Pokemon cards." "This isn't funny, Marcus," Victoria said, but there was no heat in her voice. She looked exhausted, like someone who had been fighting for so long she didn't have the energy to be surprised anymore. "It kind of is," James said quietly. "I mean, what are the odds? 4 secret children,
4 separate affairs? Richard really was committed to his pattern of cowardice. "The question is what we do about it," Elena said. "David wants to meet us. He has 8% of the company. That's not controlling interest, but it's enough to cause problems if he wants to." "What do we know about him?" Victoria asked, immediately shifting into strategy mode. "He's a tech entrepreneur," Elena said, consulting her notes. "Founded a company called Nexus Systems in 2010, sold it to Google in 2018 for $1.3 billion, started a venture capital firm. He's on the Forbes list. By all accounts, he's brilliant, ruthless, and extremely successful." "So he doesn't need our money," James observed. "No," Elena agreed, "which means he wants something else." "Revenge," Victoria said flatly. "He wants to hurt us, hurt the family that rejected him." "We don't know that," Elena argued. "Maybe he just wants what we all wanted: connection, acknowledgement, family." "At 8% ownership," Victoria challenged, "that's not connection, that's a corporate raid." "Or it's leverage," James thought thoughtfully. "Maybe he figured we wouldn't take him seriously without it. Maybe he's trying to force us to the table." Marcus had been quiet, thinking. Now he spoke up. "We should meet him, all of us, together, find out what he wants. We can't make decisions based on assumptions and fear." Elena said Marcus is right. "We meet him, we hear him out, and then we decide as a family what to do."
Victoria looked at each of them. Marcus, sober and thoughtful. James, calm and strategic. Elena, determined and brave. Her family. Against all odds, they had become a real family. "Okay," she said, "we meet him, but we go in united. We present a strong front. We don't let him divide us or manipulate us. We're Thorntons." "And Rodriguez's," Elena added with a small smile. "And Chen's," James said. "And recovering alcoholics," Marcus added, making them all laugh despite the tension. Victoria smiled, a real smile. "We're a mess," she said, "but we're our mess, and we've survived everything else. We'll survive this, too." The meeting was set for the following Tuesday at noon at V, an upscale French bistro in the Loop. Elena, Victoria, James, and Marcus arrived together, a united front. They were directed to a private dining room on the second floor, neutral territory, away from the main floor where other diners might recognize them. David Kim was already there when they arrived. Elena's first thought was that he looked like them, all of them. He had Richard's height and bearing, Maria's dark coloring, something of Victoria's sharp intelligence in his eyes, Marcus's easy smile, James's careful control. He was in his early 40s, dressed in the expensive casual style of Silicon Valley success, designer jeans, tailored blazer, no tie. He stood when they entered, and his expression was unreadable. "David," Victoria said coolly, extending her hand. They shook, evaluating each other like chess masters before a match. They all sat. A waiter appeared, took drink orders, and vanished. The tension was thick enough to cut. "I suppose you're wondering why I asked you here," David said. "We know why," Victoria said baldly. "You're Richard Thornton's son. You want acknowledgement, recognition, maybe revenge. You've bought 8% of our company to force us to listen. So here we are, listening." David smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "You think you have me figured out." "Don't we?" Victoria challenged. "No," David said simply, "you don't. Because unlike all of you, I don't want anything from the Thornton family. I never have." That stopped them all. "Then why are you here?" Elena asked quietly. David turned his attention to her, and his expression softened slightly. "Because of you," he said.
because I've been watching this family for 20 years, and I saw what you did. You came in as an outsider, someone they didn't want, someone who had every reason to take the money and run, and instead you fought for them. You saved the company. You brought them together. You did what I never could. You made them into a real family." He paused, and for the first time Elena saw vulnerability in his eyes. "I don't want revenge," David continued. "I wanted it once, when I was younger, when I first found out about Richard. I wanted to destroy everything he built. But I built my own empire instead. I proved I didn't need him or his name or his money. And then I realized something. Revenge was keeping me trapped. It was making Richard Thornton the center of my story when I wanted him to be irrelevant." "So what changed?" James asked. "He died," David said simply, "and I realized I'd wasted 20 years being angry at a ghost. I'd built a successful life, but I'd done it alone. No family, no real connections, just success and emptiness. And when I saw you four," he gestured at all of them, "when I saw you fighting for each other, choosing each other despite everything, I realized I wanted that. Not the company, not the money, just family." The silence that followed was profound. Marcus spoke first. "You bought 8% of our company to ask if you could join us for Sunday dinner?" David laughed, a real laugh. "When you put it that way, it sounds insane. But yes, essentially. I bought the stock because I thought you'd need proof I was serious, that I wasn't some con artist. I figured corporate leverage was a language Thorntons understood."
It is, Victoria admitted. But that's exactly what we're trying not to be anymore. We're trying to be more than just corporate raiders. We're trying to be actual people who actually care about each other. "Are you succeeding?" David asked. Victoria looked at Marcus, sober and present, at James, steady and honest, at Elena, brave and kind. "Yeah," she said quietly, "we are. Against all odds, we actually are." Elena stood up and walked around the table to where David sat. She held out her hand. "Elena Rodriguez Thornton," she said, "I'm your sister, and if you want to be part of this family, you're welcome, but it comes with conditions." David stood and shook her hand. "What conditions?" "No more corporate games," Elena said. "No more leverage or strategies or power plays. If you want to be family, be family. Show up, be honest, do the hard work of actually connecting. Can you do that?" David looked at her, this woman who was technically his sister, this stranger who was offering him exactly what he'd been afraid to ask for. "I can try," he said. "Good," Elena said, "because that's all any of us are doing, trying." James stood and joined them. "I'm James Chen Thornton. I'm your brother. And Elena's right. This family is messy and complicated and kind of a disaster, but it's real. If you want in, you're in, but you have to actually be in. No half measures." Marcus was next. "Marcus Thornton. I'm the family drunk. Sorry, recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for 14 months. Every day is hard, but they show up for me anyway. If you're joining us, we'll show up for you too, but you have to show up for us." Finally, Victoria stood. She walked to David and looked him directly in the eyes. "Victoria Thornton Ashford, chairman of the board, eldest sibling, and control freak in recovery. I spent my whole life trying to earn love from people who couldn't give it. I'm done with that. This family loves each other because we choose to, not because we have to. If you're here to use us, or hurt us, or play games, leave now. But if you're here because you actually want to be part of something real, then welcome. You're the fifth and final secret sibling, and we're glad you're here." She held out her hand. David looked at all of them, these four people who were his blood, his family, his second chance. He thought about all the years he'd spent angry and alone. He thought about his mother, Sarah,
who had raised him with the same fierce determination Maria had shown, the same quiet strength Margaret had possessed. He thought about what it would mean to let go of his anger and his control and his carefully constructed walls. And then he took Victoria's hand and shook it. "David Kim Thornton," he said, adding the family name for the first time in his life. "I'm your brother, and I'm here because I want to be, because I choose to be, because I'm tired of being alone." Elena started crying. Then James. Then, to everyone's surprise, Victoria. Even Marcus was wiping his eyes. They stood in a circle, the 5 Thornton children, connected by a father who had failed them all, but who, in his failure, given them each other. "So," Marcus said, breaking the emotional moment with characteristic timing, "do we hug now? Is this a hugging situation? Because I'm unclear on the protocol." They all laughed, and then, yes, they hugged, all 5 of them, in an awkward, genuine pile of arms and tears and something that felt impossibly like hope. They spent the next 3 hours in that private dining room, not as strangers or rivals or secret siblings, but as family. They told stories, shared histories, filled in the gaps of their separate lives. They laughed and cried and made plans for a future that included all of them. And when they finally left the restaurant, stepping out into the cold Chicago evening, they left as 5 instead of 4. 5 children of Richard Thornton, each abandoned in their own way, each carrying their own scars, each choosing, despite everything, to build something beautiful from the broken pieces.
This story proves that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. It's about choosing love over bitterness. It's about making broken things beautiful. If this message touched your heart, like this video, subscribe and turn on notifications, and comment which moment hit you the hardest. Was it when Elena discovered the truth? When James finally revealed himself? When Maria told Elena to take what was hers? Or when all 5 siblings came together at the second chance? Your comments mean everything to me. They help me understand what stories resonate with you. Before you go, I've got another incredible story lined up that you absolutely need to watch. Click the video on your screen now. Thank you for being here. And remember, second chances are real. Family is what you make it, and broken things can always be made beautiful. I'll see you in the next story.